Good morning, folks. Happy Tuesday, Tournament Tuesday. Good morning, afternoon, or good evening, depending on what time zone you're in. Welcome to the stream. It is Tournament Tuesday here, and we will be going over Bronze 32-team Open Quick Start Tournaments is where I got all these stats from. Not, unfortunately, the Tuesday Super Bronze. That would be a little tough. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, bottom of the sixth, Laszlo, everybody else in the chat. Quick look at the decimals before we start. We're going to open a few packs. For those of you who haven't been following for too long, let's get that out of the way, shall we? That was annoying. For those of you who haven't been following for too long, the Decimals up until about a week ago were a free-to-play packs-only team that bounced between gold and diamond a couple times. I gave up on the packs-only. I started trying to fill the face of the franchise stuff. Trying to get back up into Diamond for the end of Out of the Park 21 and heading into Out of the Park 22 and just let them kind of do their thing. And let me tell you, they were not ready to get back into Diamond. We did win the gold level championship this week, which was a little bit of a surprise. But up in Diamond now, they're just not ready. The lineup's a bit of a mess right now. I haven't spent too much time on it. The big pickup that sent us over the top was Bob Feller. So pretty good pickup there. We did finish Cleveland, trying to finish up the American League Central, but that one's going to be tough. Those who is it? Kansas City Royals. Are pretty expensive. They're going to be tough. And so I don't know if we're going to ever get that Walter Johnson face of the franchise card, sadly. We are going to open 25 packs to start with today before we head into the stats. And then we're going to dive right into the stats. We went way over time last time, so we're going to try to speed things up a little bit this time. How about that? I hope everybody had a good weekend or a good week. If this is your first time seeing me since last week, we got a nice live pack there with a George Sherrill, Bing Miller, and a Cliff Mapes in this one. I don't know if we're going to see them today. And I hope you all are having a great week. For those of you at work, I'm sorry. For those of you at home, thank you for taking time out of your day to hang out with me today. I appreciate it. This is a lot more fun because of you guys. So, we get a Diamond Machado. Not a big Machado fan, but we'll be able to sell that, make back some of our money on the packs. Is the volume a little bit low? Let me see. I can try moving that a little bit closer. I've got my mic all the way up, and let me make sure the filters look good on it. Filters look pretty good. I try not to get too much in. Let's go down here and see. Let's see if that works a little bit better for you. Let me know if that's working better for you. Let's see. We got Raul Mondesi in that one, a Gil Heredia, and 20 packs left. Just a Manny Machado so far. Tony Kemp. Man. Lots of live cards. Chuck Cottier and Chuck Hartenstein. Next we got Brett Gardner, Greg Allen, Willie Calhoun, Kessinger. I'm not even seeing any usable iron cards so far. Ouch. Del Crandall, 67 rated catcher, and a bunch of live stuff. Packs are dying for me. Free packs on a whole have been very weak for bottom of the sixth. Mike Koplov. I did get on the backup team. I got a perfect spawn the other day, so that was not on stream, sadly. Here's an Oral Hershiser. Interesting 68 card. It's too bad it's not the gold one. The gold one's one I need for some collections. Let's see. Lefevre. Oh, my goodness. What do we got now? Kinsler, live pack. What's that one? That one's worth 50 points. Gross. Valera, Jeremy Walker, Sam Haggerty. I don't even get any teams I like right now. Oh my goodness. Hoyt Wilhelm, 55 closer. Maybe a cap guy. I don't think so. I think he's a little bit too high value to be a cap guy, unfortunately. Romero, Odom, Richards. Live pack there. What do we got? Ethan Allen. And then live stuff, collection piece. I think I'm done with all the bronze and iron collections. Holy smokes. We just filled the White Sox collection. Cease, Zavala, Engel, and Fry. What are the chances of getting 4 live cards off of one team and they're all different players? That's a silly pack right there. And still worth 50 points. Here comes a silver, Ollie Perez. 7 more packs left. We got a 64 Koufax and a bunch of live stuff. Kevin Kiermaier, solid defensive outfielder. And last 5 packs. This pack brought to you by Wilhelm is part of closing the door. Okay. There's a Lava, Sean Gallagher, Mike Fishland. Let's see, McDonald, 62 Ozzy Smith. That's a new card for me. Interesting. Let's see, what's his? Not quite as good defense as the higher rated Ozzy, but I had not had that card yet. 62 Lav. 62 Lav is nice. I agree. Tommy Helms. I think you guys are going to be disappointed with Lava's placement today. I'm not going to lie. This is one. Trot Nixon was one of my favorite players in the early 2000s. I was like, if my dream card would be a silver, like somewhere between like a 70 and 74 Trot Nixon peak card that isn't really good at anything, but isn't really bad at anything, and tries really hard. Would be my dream card in Out of the Park 22. Is just a silver peak Trot Nixon that just puts all its effort into being mediocre. You pulled a live Freddie last night, nice, and an Eddie Collins historical perfect. Those are nice packs there. That's it. Nothing. Tough packs today. Decimals at 10 and 22, trying to climb back into it. 11 and a half out already. It's Tuesday morning. That's not a good start. Let us get into the lists. Catchers, we're going to go through bronze. Again, these are bronze open quick start tournaments. So that's where I get most of my bronze and iron data from. Some of the higher levels I'll do the weekly or the daily tournaments on, but for bronze and iron, I get most of my data from the open stuff. So these are designated hitter, modern statistics kind of stuff. So unfortunately, there's not a lot of different eras for the bronze and iron stuff. These are all just your standard open kind of packs here. Not packs, kind of tournaments here. So we're gonna start with the catchers. You open 3 live perfects. Cavacom opens 3 live perfects on Sunday. Was that on stream? Welcome, Cavacom. Good to see you today. And you, I Rock This. Thanks for dropping by, guys. Sundberg came in at number 10 this week. He is your number 8 used catcher all time. I meant to make this bigger. I don't want to make it too much bigger because it knocks. There we go. I think that's perfect. I think that's gonna work. I think we got it. Sundberg was the 5th most used this week, and 8th most used all time. He's a 62 rated catcher, solid defense. He is grading out at 10th in caught stealing percentage, 7th in catcher earner average, but number 1 in stolen base against per game. So a little bit of stolen base, even though he's not catching everybody. He's got that stolen base prevention going on. He does have the number 1 fielding percentage among catchers. I don't know how much that means to you, but on offense, dropping a 265 weighted on base average, not stealing any bases, 10 or so home runs per 600 plate appearances. Pretty small sample size on him, just 416, 983 overall. He's not getting used too much anymore. I know there was a time that Sundberg was used quite a bit, but I think people have latched onto their top 3 or 4 catchers at this point, and so Sundberg doesn't get used nearly as much. At number 9, here's your guy, Lava. I like him too. Fantastic defensive catcher, 26th in caught stealing percentage, 3rd in catcher ERA. He's here because his bat just isn't stacking up this week. 7th all-time overall, 9th this week. Pretty good batting average, decent on-base percentage. And then we've got slugging, OPS, and weighted on-base average. He's 9th in all of those. Not a ton of power. Or any power at all from Lava, but again, if Lava's there for his defense. Catcher's a pretty premium defensive position, and so I find Lava to be really useful. Doesn't strike out very much, kind of middle of the pack in walks, 7th out of 11 for this period. 10th out of 20 all time. So he's right in the middle there. He does suffer a little bit. Some of his rates probably suffer a little bit from large sample size, which is the opposite of that small sample size that we see from a lot of other guys that we see higher up on the list. So keep that in mind too. I think that Lava is a pretty solid option for a starting catcher, though. You've had zero luck using Lava. Yeah, I go back and forth on him. We'll talk about some of the other guys, but I've gone back and forth on him just a little bit. Sundberg has more catcher. Where'd he go? Sundberg. We froze. Bad time to freeze. Oh, we get to see Ivan Rodriguez. More catcher ability. Yeah, a little bit more catcher ability for Sundberg, too. And he's better. It's really... What is it that sets... Well, it's Sundberg's offense. Sundberg's offense is pretty bad, so... Lava's just a little bit better than Sundberg there. Roger Bresnahan comes in at number 8. This is a guy that for a little while was kind of my go-to just because he does that thing that none of the other catchers do, which is steal. Pretty solid on-base percentage to go along with it too. So he's a guy we talk a little bit about on-base percentages and walks. So he's got a very walk-driven on-base percentage, but the steals kind of make it worth it. He's down to 20. He was up really high for a little while, but I think that I forgot to bring up the stats for you guys. My bad. Here we go. So I think that the steals and bronze have come down just a little bit over time. They used to be right around 15, 16. People just aren't stealing quite as much now. Probably because all of a sudden we're seeing some pretty solid defensive catchers get played here in bronze, in the Lava, the Sundberg getting played a little bit too, and so you're seeing a little bit less stolen bases going on right now in bronze than we used to see. Yes, Bresnahan also plays some second base. Solid option as a backup. Doesn't have a ton of plate appearances. He's playing. Looks like he's playing a little bit of that as a backup / platoon, which is a pretty solid option too. He's going to give you a 270 weighted on base average or so. Pretty solid on base percentage with some steals and okay, not great backup second base too. So that's Bresnahan. We'll see if we see him on the second base list. I honestly don't know. I went through and made sure we had numbers and everything for everybody, but I didn't look at the actual players. So we'll see how that comes out. At number 7 this week was Tom Murphy, who was the 9th used catcher this week. Agreed. Helps free up a backup spot. Interesting that both bronze and iron are 80% right-handed pitching. Yeah, I was a little surprised at that too. I expected to see a few more left-handed pitchers here at bronze, but I think you start seeing them a little bit more in silver and higher is where you start seeing those good lefty pitchers. It's we'll see who's on the list. We'll see who's pitching well on the list too, and find out what's going on down there. Tom Murphy at number 7, number 4 in weighted on base average, ranks 18th overall. So it was a really good week for him, and just 262 plate appearances, super small sample size. I did up the sample size or the minimum qualifiers this week. It's now 500 plate appearances all time and 250 for this period. I get a lot of data on the bronze stuff. So next week's going to be fun. We're going to see some really small sample sizes when we do the silver snapshots. And so you're seeing just a 262 plate appearance sample here on Murphy, who doesn't look terrible defensively. But definitely there's guys who are way better than him defensively, and then he gives you a little bit of power. 4th in home runs per 600 with right around 20. Is this data publicly? At the moment, it's not publicly available. It's just on my computer. Gold does have a lot of really good lefties. Waddy. At number 6 this week, at catcher is Bob Boone. Solid defensively, 26th, 3rd in caught stealing percentage, 6th in stolen bases against, and 5th in catcher ERA. I don't factor catcher ERA into their defensive value just because it's so pitcher dependent. It's just, I threw it on here because I had gotten a request for it a little bit, and I think the catching does have an effect on it. It's just not a huge one. But it's there for information for you guys. Boone playing 7th in weighted on base average, which is a little higher than I'm used to seeing him. You're seeing this week he was 10 points above his all-time weighted on base average too. So still no home runs, just 2 per 600 plate appearances. Not really going to steal any bases, but he won't strike out and he'll walk. So he's going to have a decent on base percentage, number 1 in on base percentage. But again, it's Decent batting average too, which is, what is that? Right around league average batting average with solid defense at catcher too. Bob Boone, your third most used catcher behind Lava and Surhoff, and so I think he's a solid option here as well. At number 5 is Zunino, who's popped up here and there. Again, small sample size on him this week with a 285 weighted on base average, no steals. People are being smart enough not to have him try to steal 25 home runs almost per 600. You're going to see him right around the 20. I think he'll settle right around the 20 to 22 over a larger sample size. This 25 is probably just a little bit high. Not very good defensively compared to some of the other guys on the list. At number 4 is Hank Severid, who's dropping a 25.2. Your name's Zunino. Cool. Who are the lefties? Get posted on Anger Discord. Yeah. So the lists get posted on my Discord after the stream. Last week's didn't get posted because this week got busy, but this week will get posted today after the stream. Here in those are the gold lefties. Keymore and Burley are nasty at gold. We'll do gold eventually. We might wait until gold might not happen on the Out of the Park stream until 22, but we'll see. I'll try to get to gold before then. And so Severid comes in at number 4. Okay defensively, 6th in catcher ERA, letting up some steals. The arm and the ability aren't great. Again, smaller sample size. People have really narrowed it down to the 3 catchers they want to use. Does not strike out, though. Really solid avoid Ks for Severid. He's at number 4 this week. At number 3 is Biggio, who used to be adored as a catcher. Really solid offensive catcher, really poor defensive catcher at this point. Back when it was just Boone and Surhoff and Biggio, Biggio got used quite a bit. His offense is really good, and it's a well-rounded offense too. He's pretty solid against both lefties and righties, although he does have quite a bit more power against righties. He can run a little bit, dropping 12 steals, right around the league average for steals on you, and decent power as well. I think that's way high. It's probably closer to the 20. Maybe even a little bit below 20 is what he settles into over like a 4,000 or 5,000 plate appearance sample size for Biggio. But he is not the go-to anymore. Still a solid bat, not very good defensively. I think there's way better options out there at catcher, sadly. He was when I first started doing these, I started with bronze, was my first stream back in May or June of last year, I think. And Biggio was my number 1 on that stream. So he still has a place in my heart, but I think that there's way better options out there at catcher at this time. At number 2 is Surhoff, our number 2 used catcher. 61 catcher arm, 64 ability, 66 catching. You're seeing better defense than Biggio and a pretty solid bat to go along with it. He's 3rd in weighted on base average. His catching's not going to light the world on fire. He's not great defensively, but he's competent, which is more than you can say for Biggio. And so he provides you almost 10 home runs. He's going to get you number 1 in average, 2nd in average all time, number 1 in on base percentage, a little bit of speed to go along with it. It is hits driven on base percentage too. That's important to me because he's not an elite base stealer. He's good and his base running is useful, but he's not elite at it. So I like the fact that his on base percentage is largely driven by those singles and doubles that he's getting. He's well above 10 points above league average all time in batting average. And just a pretty solid all-around card for BJ Surhoff that gives you decent defense with pretty good offense to go along with it. At number 1 is Gary Carter. He's interesting to me. He plays a little bit of right field too, so you're seeing 315 plate appearances here overall. It looks like he's getting some right field play too. That bat is pretty solid down here at bronze right now. You're seeing 25 home runs. I think that's probably pretty valid for Gary Carter for his 91 power to go along with a decent eye and an okay avoid Ks. But the defense, just even Surhoff at 61, 64, 66 is just a little bit better defensively and that hurts him a lot, especially the arm at 59. Losing 5 points of arm on a guy like Surhoff, that's a pretty big deal. And so Carter's going to give you a lot of power. Maybe an interesting option is like a backup catcher / backup right fielder. Not getting a ton of play, but he's going to put up a serious slugging percentage for you while playing pretty poor defense behind the dish too. Who's that bottom of the sixth? Carter or Surhoff as your number one catcher? You want to see extreme starting? Yeah, it's interesting up at gold. We'll see. I haven't run the gold with the metadata before, and so if we can get to that next week, I'm definitely doing silver snapshots. I really want to get to that. I'm really excited about it. My plan was to kind of go to the defense stuff after that, maybe silver defense or bronze defense, but I'm gonna try to roll a gold in here at some point soon. Sadly, I had a lack of willpower yesterday and spent all the perfect points on the tournament team on packs, and it did not go well. So I really think that the top three of the communities chosen here are probably my top three choices for catcher at this point. I think that between Boone and Lava, I actually tend to lean towards Boone just a little bit, but I totally see using Lava instead. I think he's pretty solid too as a defensive catcher. Surhoff's a pretty good backup. Let's see, he's better versus a little bit of a split versus righties, whereas if we look at Boone, Boone splits versus lefties, and then Bresnahan, that's not who we're looking at. Lava splits versus righties. So a Lava / Boone platoon if you're really going for defense. But if you need some offense, I think Surhoff's a pretty good option too. I'm a little surprised to see Gary Carter only getting used this much. I know his defense isn't great, but his bat's pretty legit. His bat's, especially against lefties, his bat's pretty solid. I think he'd be a decent designated hitter against lefties, but designated hitter is not really a place you want to platoon either, so I kind of get it. And so that's my feeling on catchers. I mean, let's see, Bad Bird profile. Let's try to keep up with the chat, Dave. Surhoff. Bottom of six uses Surhoff. I like Surhoff. I think I'm going to go back to him. I mean, at overall card ratings, and Lava and Boone platoon is where it's at. Yeah, defensively, David Donovan, I definitely can see that. I think that's a good choice too. I'd like to get a little bit of offense sometimes out of my catcher. Where is Cooper? Let's see if he's here anywhere. Rodriguez, he didn't qualify this week. Hit me up in the Discord after this stream, and I'll see if I can find some stats on Cooper for you. You spent $300K on Lava, used him for a week in cap tourneys before going back to Mathis. Yeah, I'm not sure Lava's an expensive card for cap tournaments. And so I can see, I don't think he's going to give you enough over a super cheap card like Mathis to be usable in cap tournaments. I don't do too much cap stuff, but I can definitely see where Mathis would be a better choice. Or even, who's that other like 54 rated live catcher? I can't remember his name off the top of my head, from Texas. Maybe an option down there too, but Mathis's defense is so much better than his. So I would probably stick with him as my backup. Moving on to first baseman, Mattia got some time at first base. It looks like it was not even enough to be in the top 10 list, but he shows up here because his 11th in offense. This is not true. The zone rating, I didn't spend too much time talking about zone rating last week. I use defense a little bit in my calculations, but not very much. It's a really, really, really small part of my calculations. So like the guys who are like really good get a little bit of a bump, but the guys who hopefully aren't getting hit too hard. And the reason for that is because it's really, really hard to quantify it. It's when I download the data, all I get is one number. So it's hard for me to even say exactly how accurate this is, because when I get the zone rating, it separates it by the position they're listed at. So if Alou, for instance, gets listed as a first baseman, then he ends up on the first baseman sheet, and that's where you're getting his first baseman plate appearances and all that stuff from. So it's a little bit community based, and so I really don't use zone rating that much, and I really think that this is high for Alou. He's not very good defensively anywhere, although the 45 range at first base isn't bad. The 27 error is pretty bad. Puts him 9th out of 20, which is probably even lower than that if I would have to guess. There's probably some so what I'm trying to say is there's probably a little bit of right field leaking in here as well when you look at Alou's zone rating. So keep that in mind while we're going through the defensive stats. You'd go Mathis, Joseph, and Cap. Gibbs. No, I don't think it was Gibbs. There's a live card. I don't remember it off the top of my head. So Alou comes in 10th. Okay, bat 304 weighted on base average, which is a little higher than league average. Solid batting average at 272. He's a high contact, really high avoid Ks guys. He's not going to walk very much. A little bit of speed, but not a ton. But I don't think I'd play him at first base, so we're just going to move on. At number 9, Todd Helton shows up at number 9. This is a card I haven't seen before on the lists, and so pretty solid defensive first baseman. I think that's probably pretty accurate based off of a 55 range. The 37 error is still a little bit concerning to me at first base. Error is really the number one rating I look at for a first baseman. So a 37 there is pretty bad. But the 77 first base rating is probably going to help out just a little bit there. He's got pretty solid ratings right across the board, 52, 51, 68, 56, 70 against lefties, 58, 64. So he's got a little bit of a split against righties. He does bat left-handed, so that makes sense. Number 1 in home runs. That seems really high. I'm going to guess it drops down to 20 to 22 per 600 plate appearances. That's kind of a wag, but I don't know that he stays number 1 in home runs. But 308 weighted on base average. It's all slugging driven. It's not, his batting average is pretty low. The speed's not helping him out there at all. So it's not a terribly interesting looking card to me, but I might give it a try and see what it looks like in my tournaments. I don't run these tournaments to try to win, although getting packs is nice. I just want data, so usually if we go through a list and I'm like, I've never seen that card before, I want to play it more, I'll throw him on the team. And I may do that with Todd Helton just to see what we get out of him. At number 8 is a guy who's been consistently up here in the usage and performance on the list. He was number 1 for a really long time till we kind of made some upgrades. He plays as the number 1 defensive first baseman. And I think this is mostly first base. Let's see, 1937. So all but like 130 of his plate appearances are as a first baseman. And so pretty good range, decent error, really solid first base rating. He's a good platoon with some of the more powerful first baseman as well. But it's not really necessary to platoon him either. He's not terrible against righties. He's not terrible against lefties. He's got more power against righties, which is where I think he gets most of his playing time, which is why you're seeing a pretty inflated home run number. But he's not terrible against lefties either. You're going to get those doubles. You're going to get some home runs, probably high teens against lefties, it would be my guess. And so Marshall still continues to be a pretty decent option at first base. I don't know if he's my number 1 anymore. A lot of people are using Spezio now. We'll probably see Spezio at some point. D at first base is swell and all, but it's just not needed. Yeah, it's not. It's probably, I consider it the least important defensive position on the field. I do think error is important here because I don't want my guy just dropping balls for no reason. But a 44 is pretty solid with a 94 first base rating, in my opinion, too. So Marshall continues to be a pretty solid option, especially versus righties at first base. Number 7 is Dan Murphy. A little bit smaller sample size, but you're seeing 6th in weighted on base average, 4th in slugging, high teens in home runs this week, which is right around his all-time average, 2.8 WAR per 600. He's okay defensively, but he's kind of meh. Like everything on this card just says meh. He's the versus righties is okay. He's pretty good. You're gonna want to platoon him. He's got pretty big splits here, so you're looking at a platoon, and it's not an elite platoon. So I don't really think that Dan Murphy's he wouldn't be very high on my list of guys that I'm interested in. At number 6 is Jose Martinez. Here you start looking at a guy who you may be able to platoon with Mike Marshall. Some home runs, 20 home runs. He's much better versus lefties. You're probably going to want to avoid him versus righties, so he's definitely a platoon guy. The defense is solidly terrible. It's pretty bad. 25 infield error, 44 first base rating, 993 fielding percentage out of a first baseman is atrocious with a negative 13 zone rating. Still getting used quite a bit. 810 plate appearances total. Looks like that's probably getting some DH play would be my guess, is he's getting a lot of DH because they're probably leaving him listed as a first baseman. And so Martinez, terrible defensively, interesting as a platoon option, especially since there's only he'd only play once every few games against left-handed pitching. So the defense isn't going to kill you every other day or anything like that, because he's going to be the short side of a platoon here in bronze. But I think he's more of a designated hitter than a first baseman at this point. I think there's been too much first base defense added that's competent. I know that we're like, oh, D. Yeah, Marshall's D is coming from his height. That has a lot to do with it too. And so that's just so that's my feelings on Martinez. I think he's really interesting as a designated hitter. But again, can you platoon your DH? Maybe, maybe not. Number 5 is Joe Mauer, another guy who's kind of okay defensively, but then offensively, we're looking at the 7th weighted on base average. Not a ton of power here, so you're not going to see the home runs out of him like you will some of the other first basemen. He does have a slight split versus righties, but it's not enough to make, well, the I and avoid K splits is pretty significant here. It's just 2 points in contact and gap, but you're looking at 13 points in I and 5 points in avoid Ks for a split for Mauer. But, you see a little bit of home runs, not a lot. You're seeing 4th in average, 3rd in on-base percentage. I think he's an interesting option as like a number 2 hitter maybe, although he's going to clog up your base paths, but he's going to play okay defense at first base for you too. He's the 3rd most used all time and the 5th most used this week, so I'm a little surprised to see him getting used that much, but I imagine a lot of that has to do with the fact that he's pretty well rounded against lefties and righties. At number 4, Frank Tory, your 5th most used, but 2nd most used this week. 316 weighted on base average this week with no steals. Home runs, 10.78 home runs per 600 plate appearances, and 7th in average, 5th in on base percentage. So you're seeing a guy that's right around 5th. Not very good defensively, decent WAR, 3 WAR per 600, puts him 6th overall among first basemen. Again, your 5th most used, second most used this week. So he's a solid contact guy with good avoid Ks, and you're running a lot of high control / high stuff guys out here still, is kind of what we're seeing from the pitchers here in bronze. And so these kind of guys that have the good avoid Ks to put that stuff in play and make good contact with it with solid contact gap power tend to be pretty useful as well. So you can see that with his 318 on base percentage and his 316 weighted on base average for Frank Tory. At number 3 is Vic Power. This is your 66 rated Vic Power, a late addition to the bronze game. Just got added not super long ago, probably a couple months ago. He's a really, really good hitter versus left-handed pitching, so I imagine people are platooning him with probably maybe Marshall. This avoid Ks against lefties is ridiculous, just absolutely ridiculous. And so Power comes in. He's the 7th most used, 3rd most used this week, but you're seeing him 3rd in weighted on base average, 2nd in OPS, number 1 in slugging over the course of this week, and number 1, 1, and 2 in those all time. He ranks 4th all time, 3rd this week. Batting average is a little bit lower, but still 20 points above league average. And then the on-base percentage is a little bit below league average because he just doesn't walk. So he's going to be hitting a lot of singles, doubles, and home runs, but he's not going to walk very much. So it's all, if you're playing really solid defensive teams, Power's going to lose a little bit of his value just because everything's going into play. But again, he's putting everything in play. And 293 is right around league average and on-base percentage. Everything else is absolutely really, really good with this 66 Vic Power card, though. So he comes out at number 3. Number 2 is Keith Hernandez. Please don't tell me Spezio is not on the list. I don't want to try to tell you guys that. All-time Hernandez is ranking number 1. Decent defense. He's grading out 2nd in zone rating. Pretty good in fielding percentage at 995. And I know you look at that and you're like, there's just only 0.002 points of difference between the guy you said was awful. Well, yeah, over thousands of chances. That's a lot of misplays. But Hernandez, decent defensively. You're looking at 3rd in average, 2nd in on-base percentage, 4th in weighted on-base average. 4 steals. He adds a little bit of steals, but again, that's not a reason that I'd put him in the lineup. You lose some power, 18th in home runs, but number 1 in WAR per 600 over some of the other guys. So Keith Hernandez, some batting average, ball and play stuff going on. Agreed. 271 batting average, 335 on base percentage, but they're right in line with his all-time 7,000 plate appearances. I think that's probably something that's pretty sustainable for Keith Hernandez. I have to get a better way to highlight this stuff for you guys. I need to figure out a zoom update to a Zoom thing or something. Number 1 is Carl Taylor, your second most used all time. So we didn't even see Spezio. Let's find Spezio on this list after this. Carl Taylor, your 7th most used this week. So he's grading out 3rd all time, 4th in weighted on base average. But this week he had a 335 weighted on base average, 753 OPS, number 1 in average at 282, number 1 in on base percentage at 347, mid-teens in the home runs. So 12 to 15 home runs per 600 plate appearances. Not a ton of speed, so we're going to ignore that part. He will strike out a bunch. Which is probably why I think people are leaning away from strikeouts right now. So you're seeing him drop just a little bit. But all time, he's the second most used. This is really low, that 1,700. Most people are using Spezio. Let's see if we can find him. Let's see. Grace at 11. There's Spezio. What are we seeing out of Spezio? Why didn't he come out? So Spezio with some third base. Let's see, 39 range. The defense, we'll ignore it. Solid versus both lefties and righties. 5,400 plate appearances, a 305 weighted on base average. Solid 304 on base percentage, and a 245 batting average for you guys. 7th in stolen bases. Again, under 2, so we'll totally ignore that. He'll walk some. He'll strike out not very much. Most getting used. Could it be because people use Taylor as a utility guy? It's possible that people, yeah, and that's a possibility as well. So the thing about Spezio is that he's probably got the smallest splits among all of these first basemen, right? So he's a switch hitter, so people love their switch hitters too. And so he's got really not much. It's only like 3 points, 5 points, 5. So really small splits. He can play every day. And if people are running somebody out there that plays first base and other positions, then you can platoon. But that's probably why Spezio is getting used so much, is just because you don't have to platoon him at all. And he's not bad, like 10th in weighted on base average out of 20 first basemen. That's not terrible. And the defense isn't bad at first base either. So I don't think Spezio is the wrong play. I tend to like to get a little bit more offense out of my first baseman. So I don't know. I've been using him a little bit. I'm not sold on him, but I'm not really sold on any of the first basemen either. Yeah, some of the other guys only have to bat to their strength. I agree. I think you're absolutely right. And I'm really hoping that in 22, when 22 comes out, and I can say that I hope this because I'm not in on dev chats or anything. I'm really hoping that they can add splits to tournaments. It'll make a little bit more work for me, but I think it'll be really worth it for the community. So here's hoping. Spezio, your most used, came in at number 12. 7th all time though. So, you know, solid stuff all time. Hit cancel. I don't want to move that. 7th all time. Just a rough week for Spezio this week. I think he's still a pretty solid option. With 4 out of 5 starters being righty, worth the risk to get a better right-handed bat or left-handed bat. I think. Yeah, you're looking at a lot of right-handed starting pitchers too. So it is kind of what it is at this point. Let's move on to second baseman. Stapleton's your 8th most used all time, comes in at number 10. You can see there's a few, what do we got? 4 that people have really set their minds on here as second baseman. And so Stapleton comes in at number 10. There were 13 qualifiers this period for second base. Stapleton is 10th in weighted on base average. He does give you a little bit of power out of the second base position, which not too many people do. 11 home runs is good for second. And the steal's not going to give you any speed, and he's going to play mediocre to poor defense. I don't like him as a starting second baseman. If you're looking at like a left side of the infield, or I should say a right side of the infield utility player, then maybe Stapleton can play a little first base and a little second base for you. But overall, I think that I tried him out, and I think I've moved on from him. Huge splits here too. 15 points of gap, 10 points of power, 15 points of avoid Ks versus lefties. And so, especially with so many right-handed pitchers, Stapleton, I think, loses a lot of his usefulness because he's just not going to face lefties enough. At number 9 is Tony Cuccinello, not on the list. 385 plate appearances, missed the list by 2 plate appearances. Dang it. Cuccinello plays second base. He plays okay defensive second base. Negative 18 is inflated by the couple of guys who are really, really good. He is 6th out of the 17 all-time qualifiers at second base. He's a little bit more interesting to me than Stapleton just because the splits aren't very big. He can play a little bit against everybody. I just don't think that defense holds up, and I think that's why he's not getting played very much. I think his offense is actually okay to solid. 275 weighted on base average with almost 10 home runs. Not really any speed to go along with it. All time he ranks 7th. Largely because of his offense, which is something not a lot of second basemen have. At number 8 is Don Johnson, your number 9 used guy. This is a card that I've never seen before. Again, you're seeing some versus lefty splits, not very significant. And then it's versus righties for avoid Ks. Interesting looking defensive card. Grades out 4th defensively. Interesting. I have not seen this card, and all I can see is him in like Miami Vice wear as well. So with a name like Don Johnson. So 89 range, 102 second base rating. Interesting looking defensive card. Putting up a 246 weighted on base average is last. So he's last offensively this period among offensive second basemen, and he's last all time among offensive second basemen. So just not doing anything. He doesn't walk, he doesn't hit for power, and he doesn't avoid strikeouts enough to make anything else useful. So I think it's largely a unusable card for bronze tournaments. And you guys, I don't say that very often. I just don't see Don Johnson being a card that's terribly useful. Del Pratt comes in next. He's your second best offensive second baseman according to weighted on base average. 5th best all time. Pretty bad defensively. It's a position that I consider second base like the 3rd most important defensive position on the field behind shortstop and center field. And so Pratt being pretty bad defensively makes me shy away from him just a little bit, even though his bat's pretty solid power. The avoid Ks is a real thing. Less than 40 strikeouts per 600 plate appearances is something else. Walks per 600 is pretty good. Everything over here is top 5. You're looking at a really solid offensive second baseman with really no splits to speak of. He can play against anybody you want to. I just think that the defense is it doesn't quite play up. If he had a secondary position, I think he'd be a phenomenal utility guy. If he had even a little bit of shortstop or a little bit of third base, but for the purposes of bronze tournaments, I just don't see Del Pratt having a ton of use. At number 6 is Jim Gilliam, who didn't make the played list. Solid offensive player, really bad defensively, probably even worse than this. Really terrible negative 51 zone rating. That range at second base isn't going to play. It's a non-starter to me, and I can't see playing him. He got just enough plate appearances to qualify. It looks like he's playing a little bit of third base as well because he didn't make it onto this list. So little bit of utility, solid bat, maybe interesting as a utility guy, but that 48 range at second base is really concerning to me, even as just a backup utility guy. That is a solid looking second base bat, especially against lefties though. If this was closer to 60, I think you'd see Gilliam get a lot of play. That arm at third base, my goodness, everything just screams to me, don't put this guy in the field. 325 weighted on base average. I'm trying to think if there's any way to get use out of this card, because it's an interesting card versus lefties. Again, with no lefties pitching though, I think it loses too much value here in these bronze tournaments, and so I'm not surprised to see him not make the meta list. But man, that is a pretty awesome looking bat versus lefties. Wish Pratt could play a corner. Yeah, I could see him at DH. He'd be an interesting platoon at DH. I think I'm gonna make a note of that. I want to get more information on him as a designated hitter for the next time we do this. Jim Gilliam, DH. We'll see if I can read that after I get done. Interesting. At number 5, we have David Fletcher. Fletcher's not going to be your starting second baseman. He's probably going to be your utility infielder if you're playing him. He's a pretty solid bat with kind of okay defense. 70 range is just enough for me to say, yeah, I like him as a backup second baseman, backup third baseman, backup shortstop. He's kind of the go-to utility guy right now, I think, here in Bronzers. Not too many guys that are better suited to it than him for an infield utility at this point. 265 average, 309 on base percentage, 376 slugging, 303 weighted on base average. Again, the defense is going to play down a little bit at second base just because you've got so many good defensive second basemen at the level. This is probably the level where we see the biggest separation between the defensive guys and the offensive guys at second base. Yeah, and so why not just punt third? He's a switch hitter too. Yeah, that's a possibility as well. Sorry, I'm like 10 seconds behind you guys. You were on Johnson. He's been consistently solid. Interesting. I might have to take a look at Don Johnson too. Don Johnson. Yeah, and with Bronze at shortstop. So yeah, the loss of range at second base isn't a huge deal either. You sold a Todd Helton when we were talking about him. Just sold a Gilliam. Nice. So Gilliam's, yeah, interesting. Next up is David Fletcher, utility guy. Number 4 is Moriarty. We start seeing those defensive second basemen, right? So second base and shortstop are really the positions where you see defense kind of take over. Center field a little bit, not so much, but you see a huge separation in that zone rating between the top 4 defensive or the top 3 defensive second basemen, really, and then the offensive guys. So Rath at 2, second in zone rating, second in fielding percentage. The bat is a little bit scary, 254 weighted on base average, 558 OPS. You're looking at 12th out of 13. It's not a great bat, but he is really, really, really stellar defensively. With home runs, he's got a little bit of home runs, probably settle right in that 5 or so category. You've been running Prado at third base. We'll see where Prado ends up at third base. I'm pretty sure he's on the list somewhere based off of my quick glances. Right in the middle of the pack, strikeouts, walks, steals, home runs. Even though his rate stuff is kind of poor, the on-base percentage is okay, and he has a little bit of speed to go along with it too. So Moriarty is your second most used second baseman right now, and so he comes out at number 4. At number 3 is Delano DeShields. One of those top 4 isn't going to be on the list. DeShields at number 6, used all time. He's number 3 this week. 289 weighted on base average puts him 4th. 323 on base percentage has him 2nd. The defense lags just a little bit behind those other guys, so he's not an elite offensive second baseman. Not that there's an elite offensive second baseman in Bronze, but he's not like that top-level offensive second baseman, and the defense lags enough behind the top defensive guys that I don't think his offense adds a terribly large amount of value. He does steal more than anybody else. He does have a lot of almost 30 stolen bases per 600, which with a 323 on-base percentage that's largely driven by walks, can definitely be a valuable asset to your offense. I just don't know if you want him to be your everyday second baseman. At number 2 is Scott Fletcher. Looks like I know who didn't make the list. Fletcher with a 91 range and a 99 second base rating grades out 3rd defensively and right in the middle of the pack offensively. So what you get in Fletcher is a pretty well-rounded card. He's not quite the outstanding second baseman that Rath or Matsui are, but he's going to give you offense on top of that too. So the on-base percentage is a little low at 274. It's pretty well below league average, but he's going to get hits for you. 239, right? Also a little bit below league average, but he's got some home runs, he's got some steals, he's got pretty good OPS, pretty good slugging, and a pretty good weighted on base average. So you get a middle of the pack offensive second baseman with defense that is right on the border between really, really good and elite, right? And so I think Fletcher is a pretty interesting option at second base. Backman gets used at DH, yeah. And so number 1 is Kaz Matsui, grading out number 1 defensively, and actually having a pretty solid offensive week this week. 273 weighted on base average is Pretty good among second basemen, right in the middle of the pack there. No, we don't want to move that. And right in the middle of the pack in average on base percentage. Normally he's one of those bottom two, as you can see right here. Had a pretty good offensive week this week, though, did Kaz Matsui. 6 home runs, number 2 in stolen bases, grades out number 2 all time. I think Fletcher was number 1. No, who's number 1? Number 1 all time is not on the list, so actually it was Stapleton is number 1 all time. Let's find Backman. So here's Backman, grading out 5th and weighted on base average, but again, that defense is pretty far behind those other guys, and yeah, he gets used mostly as a designated hitter at this point, which is why you're seeing a ton of plate appearances from him. I'm going to guess that almost all of those are as a designated hitter, so solid contact plus avoid Ks for a 307 on base percentage, 268 batting average, and then some steals, some speed to go along with it. Backman gets used as a DH. I used to use him. He was another one of those guys like Marshall or whoever, who's kind of been on the list, up and down the list since we started doing these, and ends up being just outside the top 10 now, but he's grades out 12th all time at second base, so just a solid offensive bat for a designated hitter. Switch hitter, no need to platoon Matsui. Let's go back up to Matsui. With Matsui as a switch hitter, he's got solid, the splits aren't big. You look back at the other defensive guy who's Moriarty, you got pretty big splits here. But he's left-handed, so his splits err towards right-handed, which makes him a solid addition too, I think, at second base. At third base, let's move on to third base. There's David Fletcher again. We talked about him. He grades out 8th and weighted on base average among third basemen, so you can already see right away there's a little bit more offense here at third base, which is to be expected. Decent third base defense, a 61 with a 70 range. Some home runs, not really any steals, but 6th in average and on-base percentage out of 19 qualifiers, which is pretty solid. Ranked 7th all-time among third basemen, so not a ton of plate appearances. I think that you're not going to see him on these lists because people who are playing David Fletcher play him all over the place. He plays a lot of second base, a lot of third base, a lot of shortstop as well, and so he doesn't quite get onto the third base list, but Fletcher is a valuable utility infielder. At number 9 is Don Hoke, grading out number 4 defensively at third base. Super small sample size. No number 1 used third baseman. Is there... Weird. How did I not catch that? I'm pretty sure it's Tovar. I wonder what happened there. Let's see. I'm pretty sure it's Tovar is number 1. I wonder if the formula got deleted by accident. No, the formula should be there. Weird. That is weird, because usually if there's a tie, they'd be 2, because it would be a 1.5. Let me go check. Current third base. I know what happened. I'll fix that. Fixed. I know exactly what happened. Fixed. Good catch. Good catch on that one. So a lot of people using Tovar. We'll see where he falls. Don Hoke comes in at number 9. Whoops, we scrolled down. He is a solid defensive third baseman. Not a very good bat, though. 287 weighted on base average is pretty bad for a third baseman. But he is solid defensively. He gets strikes out a ton. Doesn't walk too much, kind of middle of the pack there. A little bit of speed for him, which is something you don't see from too many of the third basemen. But a really small sample size too, so I suspect this home run number drops quite a bit as time goes on. So Don Hoke comes in at number 9. Number 8 is Buck Weaver. Your number 2 used third baseman. 9th in weighted on base average, 10th in defense. So some home runs here. 18 home runs puts him 6th. 4th in steals. 4th in strikeouts. 19th in walks. This guy just does not walk at all. That 12 against right-handed pitching. Solid splits against right-handed pitching. I'm imagining that's why we're seeing him get used. Even though he's a switch hitter, he's got pretty huge splits between his versus lefties and versus righties. Getting used a ton because he's better versus righties at this point. Solid slugging, decent on-base average, decent defense for a third baseman. So Buck Weaver comes in at number 8. Number 7 is Tovar. So he's your number one most used guy. Kind of solid numbers across the board here. He's okay defensively. I think he's probably a little bit higher than this. Again, defense is a little bit unreliable. Playing out to a -6, so I don't love it. I think there's definitely guys who are better defensively, and he's kind of middle of the pack offensively right now with a 262 average, which is well above league average. 7th in on-base percentage, 8th in slugging, 7th in OPS, and weighted on-base average. Number 1 in steals. So he's one of those guys who's kind of ingesting a little bit more steals in the game, even though the numbers have come down a little bit. He was a guy, this is a card that showed up pretty late in the game. He hasn't been out for the whole out of the park 22. Tovar, he does play like 9,000 different positions. So you got him second base, third base, shortstop, left field, center field, right field. It looks like almost everything is as a third baseman though. And so getting used a lot, kind of middle of the pack offensively, kind of middle of the pack defensively. Tovar plays on your silver team. What's up, Oof? Sorry. I've been doing this for months, so I'm just now on the out of the park stream. You've been playing Weaver at third, Lowry says, but haven't gotten any results. Thanks, bottom of the 6th. I appreciate it. I hope Ryan Roberts places high. Let's see. Harvey Keen comes in at number 6, and he's more of a versus lefties guy. So I think with Braun's trending so far versus righties at this point, it wasn't always that way, but it has definitely moved that way over the last month that I've been collecting this data. But Harvey Keen used to be a pretty useful bat. I think with 80% of the pitchers being right-handed now, Keen's a little bit better off the bench. Also, he's more of a backup left field, right field, third baseman. I'd rather punt my defense in left field than third base if I have the choice. Third base is definitely an option for punting your defense, but I'd rather do it in left field personally. Although, with that said, I do value left field a little bit less, but we all know who the shortstop's going to be at the bronze level. So with bronze Ozzy Smith at shortstop, punting third base becomes a little bit more of an option than punting left field. And Keen's going to be about as valuable at third base as he is in left field. So he's always been kind of an interesting card, but having such huge splits versus lefties now, I think, makes him a little bit less useful unless you're going to use him as a platoon or as a utility guy against left fielders. What rating do I consider punting? It really depends on the position. At third base, anything below like 50, I would probably consider punting. But at first base, it would be a little bit lower. At shortstop, it would be not Ozzy Smith is punting shortstop. So you could usually tell who was featured on my streams when suddenly I like it. So Keen at number 6. At number 5 is Cecil Travis, your 9th most used all time. There's going to be a lot of guys. Let's see. There's definitely a couple guys who are getting used a lot who aren't making the top 10 this week. Travis at number 5, when weighted on base average, number 5 overall. Kind of okay defensively. So see, this is a borderline punt at third base to me. A 56 range with a 67 arm and a 45 rating at third base. That's a borderline punt to me at third base. He's pretty bad defensively out of 23 people, so it's definitely erring on the side of a punt if you're looking at Cecil Travis. That said, Travis has some solid ratings against right-handed pitching. The problem is his ratings, he doesn't have any power, and he's not adding any speed to that either. And so his usefulness is pretty limited to me. He's going to hit singles. He's going to have a pretty good on-base percentage, but he's going to clog up your base paths. So where are you going to bat him in your lineup like this? He's maybe a number 5, number 6 hitter because he's going to be moving people around the bases. He's definitely not a 3, 4, 1, or 2. So he probably sits there in the 5 or the 6 slot to me. Playing okay, not great defense at third base. He's an interesting card too, though, especially versus righties. I want more on him. Travis, third base. I want more information on Cecil Travis. Interesting, not sold. At number 4 is Moriarty, who's here because he steals bases. But boy, has this number come down. Not a big week for him. Only 800 plate appearances. Moriarty Moriarty was one of those guys who showed up on my stream at one point, and all of a sudden he was all over the place. And I started using him. He's an interesting card because he's got pretty solid defense at third base, and a lot of steals, but that on base percentage has always been pretty bad. And so a 285 on base percentage, even if you're stealing 20, 30 bases per 600 plate appearances, isn't terribly helpful. So I have moved on from Moriarty, even though it's a super interesting card, and he's got no splits to speak of. Like his ratings are almost exactly the same. They're just not great. He's not a great bat. He's a great base runner. He's a pretty good defender. He's just not a good enough bat to make that terribly useful, I don't think. Takes 3 doubles to score Travis. He was king of bronze cap for the first month or so. I can absolutely see that. A 64 rating on a cap team for a card like this is pretty solid. But I can definitely see people moving on from it pretty quickly too, because if this is the kind of card that will be inconsistent, but if he has a good tournament for you, this is the kind of card that can really put you over the top. The problem is the inconsistency, I think, is he's just not going to consistently have that 300 weighted on base average. I've seen him put up some silly numbers, but he doesn't do it all that often, and it's really the combination of I and avoid K and his normal batted ball profile. I'm willing to bet if he had a ground ball profile instead of a normal profile, you're looking at an on-base percentage closer to league average just because of that speed. But because of that batted ball profile, it's he lags a little bit behind some of the other guys. At number 3, Ryan Roberts. Man, what can I say about Ryan Roberts? The first time I did bronze, like I said, bronze was the first list I did on stream. Everybody was using Frankie Gustine at the time. It was all Frankie Gustine. And I did my list, and Roberts was at the top, and Gustine didn't even make the top 5. And so people were like, where's Frankie Gustine? I'm like, well, he's not as good as... I don't think he's as good as you think. And so Roberts for a little while was consistently at the top of the list. Now... I still have a little bit of a soft spot in my heart for him. He's okay defensively, middle of the pack. He's going to give you a pretty decent weighted on base average. You're going to probably need to platoon him, and you're going to need to platoon him against lefties, unfortunately. So now that I'm able to do the splits and stuff, and I'm able to see this stuff, I really... This is the first time I think I've said this on stream. I'm not a bit as big a Ryan Roberts fan as I used to be. I used to really like him, but with so many people running right-handed pitchers out there, he just loses some of his usefulness. He comes in at number 3. I think he's probably getting platooned because these look like his numbers against left-handed pitching. And if you can fit a platoon in at third base, Ryan Roberts is an absolutely stellar platoon option at third base. That's up to you to figure out how to run your team that way. He is an awesome bat against left-handed pitching. I mean, he's going to play once every 5 games. There is a pinch hitter against lefties, like if you, which I think has used too. So I don't think Roberts is an unusable card. I don't think he's my starting third baseman anymore though. Is my feelings on Roberts. I used to be really high on him, but it's trended so far towards right-handed pitching here at bronze that I think that I've moved on from him just a little bit. The walks are real. He's got an on-base percent walks and home runs. Goodness gracious. He used to be heads and shoulders to me above all the other third basemen. At number 2 is Eddie Kazak. Another guy with lefty splits, though not as pronounced as Roberts, but you're also seeing less power here too. Kazak's number 1 in weighted on base average though. As you can see, his versus righties is definitely better, far better than Roberts. Even though he loses 10 points of power, everything else is pretty good. Second in average, second in on base percentage, first in slugging, OPS, and weighted on base average this week. But limited sample size, so only 900 plate appearances this week. 3,000 overall, he ranks 13th. So you're seeing the defense is not great. If he's not given, this is just not a sustainable number. He's going to be further down, closer to that 317, which is going to be closer to closer to the pack, I should say. This is this is a pretty huge aberration this week. This 481 slugging and this 353 weighted on base average. Kazak just had a really solid week. I'm going to guess that people have started platooning him a little bit. He does hit some home runs to go along with the average and the on base percentage. He is going to clog your bases. This is if you're playing him and you're playing him against lefties, he's probably a decent number 2 bat, or maybe a number 4 or number 5. I don't necessarily think he's a number 3 hitter. I don't like his eye quite that much, but you can get away with it, I think. Definitely not a leadoff. I want a little bit more speed at leadoff for me, so that's Kazak at number 2. Number 1 is Michael Braso. In 257 plate appearances, put up a 348 weighted on base average. That's not sustainable. He ranks 12th all time, 7th in weighted on base average all time with a 308, over 643 plate appearances. I doubt even this is sustainable for Braso. Just a really solid week for Braso. He's not going to hit 27 home runs. He will probably strike out 120 plus times, but Braso comes in at number 1. Is Prado going to show up somewhere else? Let's find Prado. I know he's on here somewhere. Oberkfell comes in at number 11. This is a guy that I've seen put up some silly numbers. Pretty solid versus righty splits. Number 12 is Batista, who's just there for his home runs. Pretty solid weighted on base average. And okay defense from Batista as well. There's Gilliam again. There's Hanahan, who's your 5th most used. Pretty good defensive. This is your defensive third baseman team. Not a very good bat out of Hanahan. Where is he? There's Gustin at number 15, dropping a 293 weighted on base average. Again, splits versus lefties, so not terribly useful now. I think Gustin's still getting a ton of play, though. And middle of the pack defensively, I know I saw him. Hewlett showed up first for a little while. He is your number 1 defensive third baseman still, and is not getting used as much because that bat is just not good. Stan Hack, where is he? I swear I saw him. He might not have qualified. I know I've seen his name on a list. I know I've seen Prado's name on a list, but he apparently did not qualify at third base for the purposes of this week. We'll take a look at him when we get there. Shortstop's next to them. I'm going to take a quick break. Hewlett is a solid. Hewlett showed up out of nowhere. I was doing the list, and then all of a sudden in August or September, this guy Hewlett shows up just out of absolutely nowhere. And I was like, what is this? Number 1, he showed up. He was like, I'm like, all these lists all this time. You got Roberts up there. You've got Gustin up there. You got Oberkfell showing up every now and then. Kazak, Moriarty. And then all of a sudden, this guy, Tim Hewlett, shows up with like a 7.5 WAR per 600. I'm like, what just happened? This guy just broke everything. And it was all defensive. And so now, still, I don't think he's a terrible option. He's going to give you the best defense out of any third baseman. The WAR is still pretty close to 5. Didn't get used too much this week. He's not getting used as much because I think people are trying to coax a little bit more offense out of their teams at this point. And third base is one of those positions you can do that. But if you really want a defensive third baseman, Hewlett is the guy. And so he's pretty solid. Let's see, what were the questions? I passed over Hack 2 or 3 times. Did you? Oh, you wanted me to look at Stan Hack? Did you ask for Hack? Sorry, if you asked for Hack, I missed it. I can go. Let's look at Hack. Cycle through the left to find Hack. Oberkfell, Batista, Gilliam, Hanahan, Gustin, Hewlett, Hack. Here's Stan Hack. So 9th used in this period, weighted on base average of 279, 16th, 13th in batting average, 16th in home runs, and the defense is kind of middle of the pack for Stan Hack. All time he ranks number 8 though, so pretty off week for him it looks like. He was a good 30 points below his weighted on base average. And 1 below his home runs, the on base percentage 30 points below. Just a really rough week for Hack. He grades out 8th all time over his 2,100 plate appearances. So Weaver was around 8th. Yeah. Weaver definitely made the top 10. He was right here at number 8, 301 weighted on base average, 303 all time. Another solid week for him. Do we want to breeze through the shortstops? Gilliam comes in at number 8. Offense, a little bit of defense. It is what it is. Number 7 is Uribe. Not very good defense, 12th out of 20 qualifiers all time. How do you guys feel about just breezing through this? I think we all know who the shortstop is. Gilliam's got a little bit of righty split, a little bit of second base and shortstop. So if you have, if you're playing a platoon at third base with, Ryan Roberts and somebody who hits right-handed pitching really good or something like that, and you're looking for a solid defensive backup utility guy who only plays second base and shortstop, Guillaume, you can do worse than Louis Guillaume. He's a decent-ish bat, not great, but the defense at both positions is going to be okay. Ignore this. This is wicked small sample size aberration, although, it's... There's probably some third base in there. There's probably a little bit of second base in there as well. And so he's losing some ability everywhere. But a 90 and an 80 at shortstop and second base with a 79 range is, if you're looking for just a second base shortstop, then maybe. And he gives you a little bit of a bat too. Number 7 is Uribe, who's not good defensively at shortstop, but can play multiple positions. So you've got second base, third base, shortstop with some power. So if you're looking for a guy that's your utility infielder, maybe a bat off the bench with a little bit of power, especially against righties. So you're seeing 89 power with a 54 avoid Ks against righties is a pretty solid number. He is the number 1 shortstop at hitting home runs, though not all time, which is weird. Somebody qualifies for this that didn't qualify for this that hits a lot of home runs. At number 6, I don't know if we'll see Prado on this list. I don't see him over here. Yeah, he's right here. So he will probably show up on this list. Alvin Dark, shortstop, 76 range, 314 plate appearances here. 7th in weighted on base average out of your 8 shortstops this period. 6th out of 20 all time. Rough week. Let's see, with a 78 contact, a little better versus lefties. You're probably going to see something like this, probably in the 3 to 305 weighted on base average range. Somewhere between 7 and 9 home runs. It's such a small sample size, it's hard for me to say. The fact that he only has a 76 range and only plays shortstop, I don't think you're going to see Alvin Dark get used very much. Number 5 is Joe Tinker. Here's your number 2, probably your second best defensive shortstop, even though he's showing up at number 6 here. He's right up there as not quite Ozzy level. He just doesn't have a competitive bat at all. A 226 weighted on base average was a really, really bad week for him. Tinker used to be kind of, before everybody had Ozzy, back when that bronze Ozzy was like a 2,500 point card and not everybody could afford it. Joe Tinker was the number 2, just because his defense is pretty stellar. Ignore this. It comes up over time. This is just an 825 plate appearance sample size, so he's probably number 2, number 3 at shortstop. Decent eye, decent gap. Ozzy's just better in just about every way. At number 4 is Andre Jimenez. Interesting looking bat. Some speed, maybe as a backup. Don't love that as a second base backup. Again, I don't say unusable very often. I just don't see this card getting too much use. At number 3, here's your Martin Prado, who's showing 9th defensively. I don't think that's necessarily accurate either. Decent numbers versus lefties. The splits versus righties, that's not awful. 52 eye with a 71 avoid Ks with a 66 contact and gap power. Isn't terrible against righties, but definitely a split versus lefties. 86 range is a little bit lower than that top tier of shortstops. Decent shortstop, really solid platoon or utility guy. I get those mixed up every now and then. Pretty solid utility guy. Plays a little bit of third base, which an 86 range with a 44 third base rating is pretty okay to me, especially with that 84 arm. Shortstop, if he's going to play every 4 days or so, then you can live with that defense at shortstop. 65 left field rating. We'll see where he ranks in left field, but he ranked number 3 this week at shortstop. One of the better bats that plays shortstop with this type of capabilities. The reason that, I'll be honest, if this right here said shortstop, I'm willing to bet this is a silver card. I'm willing to bet this changes to like a 71, 72 rated card, just because the shortstop defense is kind of okay. it's pretty good. It's better than his left field defense, right? So I don't know how much that kind of stuff goes into the ratings, but I wouldn't be surprised if he was listed as a shortstop if this isn't a silver card. It's a pretty solid bat. 302 weighted on base average is 10 points above league average. Looks like he had a little bit of an off week this week. Even though he's ranking higher. 387 slugging, 258 batting average. All of those are pretty well above league average. It's a pretty good bat that appears like he can play some pretty good defense at shortstop. Looks like he only has 500 plate appearances as a shortstop right now, so I don't know. So again, this zone rating, while it's not going to be good, he's going to be usable at shortstop over the long term, I think. So Prado's an interesting guy as a utility player or as a starting third baseman. I could see him starting at third base or at left field. Number 2 is David Fletcher. We've talked about him at length already today. Solid utility infield backup. Decent bat with some pretty good defensive ratings to go along with it. So I think Fletcher's a pretty interesting option as a defensive backup. And now the one card in bronze that probably has to be on your team to be competitive. Bronze Ozzy Smith, your 68 rated bronze Ozzy Smith. We just saw the 62, which just doesn't stack up to this one. You got 69 gap against lefties, 56 gap against righties, 83 avoid Ks against righties with 75 speed and 92 steals. He's going to steal bases, decent on-base percentage, not great. Again, the defense is really what's going to set him apart. The zone rating looks small based off of some of the other numbers we've seen, but that's just because he's had 52,000 plate appearances, and so he's settled in. A lot of the other guys that you're seeing a smaller sample size for that are all over the place with like negative 60 or whatever just haven't settled in somewhere yet. I'll be honest, I wouldn't be surprised once some of those guys, Uribe, Tinker, some of the better Prado, maybe if he got 4,000 plate appearances as a shortstop, I wouldn't be surprised to see Ozzy drop to number 2 or number 3 just because of his bat. Because again, I don't count defense that much, but that just shows how good Ozzy Smith. This is probably the one card. Is that shortstop, defense, or outfield for Prado? So it's I don't want to rehash the defense too much, but it's shortstop. It's times that he's listed as a shortstop, though. So if he's playing as a utility role and getting enlisted as a left fielder, playing a utility role or getting shortstop innings there, then it's not getting accounted for. Defense is really difficult for me to account for. So it's probably the biggest issue I'm having with getting the rankings exactly where I want them to be. Yeah, 52,000 versus 2,000 is really all you need to see. Bronze Ozzy Smith is the 68 Ozzy Smith is probably the one card that if you're gonna say what card should I put on my team, no questions asked, it's probably this one. And so he's at number 1 at shortstop. I'm gonna take a really quick break and refresh my drinks and my coffee. You got kind of cranky me today because I turned my coffee on too early this morning, so I got lukewarm coffee. It had already shut off by the time we were getting ready to come to stream. So I'm going to go refill with coffee that should hopefully be hot at this point, and I'll be back in just a couple minutes. Can I show Fletcher again for a quick second? Yeah, absolutely. Again, I really like him as a utility option. He's pretty useful. So if you type shortstop, is it getting checked? Can you show Fletcher again? Thanks. So if you type shortstop, is it getting checked? I don't know what that means, Luke. Did I miss something earlier in the chat? Yeah, Luke, I'll get back to you when I get back from the break. So if you can clarify something you wrote got missed. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, I'm not seeing it. So if you can just hit me up again, I'll try to answer it when I get back from break. So I'll be back in 2-3 minutes. Thanks, guys. All right, guys, I am back. Let's see. Something you wrote it. You had 68 Ozzy trained up at second base and third base in addition to shortstop. He was great until his lack of a bat caught up to him. Yeah, if you could train guys in tournaments, there are some cards that would be way more useful than they are right now. Ozzy's not one of them, I don't think, but there are some cards out there that would be super useful. I'm thinking like Mike Greenwell or something in gold. Okay, it works. The auto mod is blocking your message. Interesting. Was looking for a term that might be deemed inappropriate. Shortstop seems to be okay. Break the game. That works as well. I don't know. I'm not disliked. Ozzy would be like have like a 195, and your opponent would use the same card, and his Ozzy would have it. Yeah. Where can we find this data? Is just on my stuff. I post screenshots of the top 10 list to my Discord after the stream though, so I forgot last week and then updated the sheet, so I can't get an accurate one for last week. Out of the Park does, but it's very evident that all cards of a certain player and rating do not play out the same. Some card owners have better. Yeah, so it depends on like strategy and stuff too. I don't really go into strategy very much. Or team building because it's already a really long stream. Like we talk about 120 players. That's if I'm trying to cram it under 2 minutes, you're looking at and do the extra stuff like opening packs at the beginning to give people time to settle in. You're looking at 30 to 45 seconds per player. And so I don't talk too much about strategy or team building or stuff like that. But that's something that I'm willing to do offline if you want to talk about it too. So feel free. Left fielders, number 10 is Warren Cromartie. 9th and 10th used all time. 12th and weighted on base average. Decent defense. Your number 2 defensive left fielder. I don't love his bat in left field. It's not, especially with his splits versus lefties. You're seeing he's 6th in home runs, 8th in slugging, 11th in average on base percentage. Grades out 15th all time. It's even worse. All time, you're seeing him 17th. This is out of 12. This is out of 18. Cromartie's bat just doesn't play up. Really good, probably one of the best defensive left fielders in bronze. The bat just doesn't quite play out there. There's too many good bats, and left field is a position you can really get some offense out of. At number 9 is Prado. Here's Prado, the 7th most used left fielder. The defense, I don't know about that. I think that probably has a little bit of small sample size to it. But overall, Prado looks like a decent bat. Again, I really think Prado looks like a pretty solid utility player. I've started trying him out a little bit. We're going to see. I don't look too much at my team's stats. I tend to just download the whole thing. But that's a plan. Now that I'm kind of settled into this routine where I do the... where my routine is starting to settle in now that I have this time slot, I'm going to start trying to look at my team and adjust my strategy. So hopefully I have a strategy that I haven't changed in months. And so I'm going to try to look at different strategies and stuff like that and figure out what helps these guys work a little bit better. So that's my goal going forward. But Prado comes in at number 9 among left fielders. Number 8, Nemo Liebold is a pretty interesting option in left field, especially since he's pretty solid against right-handed pitching. 297 weighted on base average is just above league average. Not going to hit any home runs, but he's going to be on base all the time for you. He's got pretty good wheels to go along with it. He will walk. It is a walk-heavy on-base percentage, not a batting average heavy, but his batting average is above league average. So he's an interesting option as a bat against right-handed pitching in left field. I don't think he's... Well, we'll talk about that when we get there. Number 7 is Cuckoo Christensen, your 8th most used all time. Only 333 plate appearances this time. People gave up on him pretty quick. Again, you're looking at a guy who's pretty decent against right-handed pitching, right? 81 contact, 64 avoid K, 63 I in a right-handed heavy hitting, heavy pitching tournament format. 2nd in average and on base percentage, almost a 300 batting average. Is almost unheard of, which it's probably going to settle more into the 285 range, I would think. This looks probably a little bit more accurate to me. Just a really solid week for him with a 309 weighted on base average. Not a ton of speed, but smart enough base runner that he can get 6 steals or 6 net steals per 600 plate appearances, which is pretty solid. And kind of middle of the pack in strikeouts and walks. The problem is he's middle of the pack batting, right, and kind of mediocre defensively too. And so you're not sure what out of the park does. Yeah, Tom Hall comes to mind for me. The Iron is one of those ones that comes to mind as a player that underperforms for me and performs well for everybody else. Pinella comes in at 6th, grading out middle of the pack defensively. You're seeing a guy 311 weighted on base average, which is right in line with his all-time 714 OPS. Right in line with his all-time. Everything, just consistent performer. 10th in on-base percentage, though. So the on-base percentage is a little low, but you're getting 20 home runs. So he's 3rd in power among left fielders. Everything, his week was like exactly on his averages, on his all-time averages, which is nuts. I usually see at least a little bit of an aberration, but everything's kind of right there. And so Pinella kind of is what he is. He's going to give you 20 or so home runs. He's going to give you a decent weighted on base average, but he's not going to be on base very often. You're going to look at the power. He's going to drive in runs, but he's going to get out quite a bit too. He'll strike out. He won't strike out too much, but especially as a fly ball hitter, the home runs are definitely useful. Pinella comes in used at number 3. At number 5, Roger Cedano as a left fielder comes in at number 5. He's a little bit lower than I would have expected him to be on any list just because steals are weighted so high. It's been steals, much like defense, steals have been really hard for me to weight on my lists. I think I'm getting there. I don't weight them very much, but the truly elite base stealers definitely get a bump from their steals. And Cedano is one of those guys. I will point out that Cedano is the guy who took my bronze team from losing in the first and second round all the time to consistently getting through that second round into the quarterfinals and semifinals and winning consistently. It was when I added him to the lineup. Back then it was just card drops, right? It was a packs only team, and Cedano dropped out of a pack, and all of a sudden my bronze tournament team went on a tear. People have caught up. It's not the dominant team it was back then, especially since everybody can get all of these cards, but especially right now, Cedano is pretty solid against right-handed pitching. Would I play him in left field? Probably not. I think he gets a lot of use as a designated hitter. And I'll be honest, we saw a guy earlier, I forget who it was earlier, that we were like, designated hitter against lefties. Cedano is a decent option for a designated hitter, I think. Solid on-base percentage, solid batting average. The slugging's kind of okay. It looks low. At 361, it's right around league average, but the OPS is pretty solid at 692 and the weighted on base average of 311, and these are his all-time numbers. He's probably been one of the most consistent offensive performers. I'm going to talk about him more when we get to right field, though, because I don't think he's terribly useful as a left fielder. At number 4 is Harvey Keen, your second most used left fielder. Again, the defense lags a little bit behind, but it's a solid bat. Oh, look at that, versus lefties. You're going to probably want to platoon him, and if you can fit a platoon in left field, then good on you. But he's going to crush lefties, and he's going to hit pretty good against righties too. If he played good defense, he wouldn't be a bronze card. That's the issue with Harvey Keen, is that he's a pretty spectacular bat. And so if he had decent defense, you wouldn't be able to use him in bronze tournaments. I think it's as simple as that. He does split versus lefties, but again, this is not unusable against righties. At a position where I'm okay with this as a defender, I think Harvey Keen's a pretty decent option in left field. At number 3, here's your number 1 most used left fielder, Vince Coleman. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I have moved on from Vince Coleman. He is going to be your number 1 defensive left fielder. There's no question. He separates himself entirely from the field in left field. The problem is he only plays left field. You can't really play him anywhere else. And his offensive numbers are, while I won't go so far as to say atrocious, it's not great. You're looking at just above league average on base percentage at 307, which is right in line with his 306. But the batting average of 247 is just below league average. And this is a position where this defense is awesome. Don't get me wrong. The stolen bases are fantastic. 55 steals per 600. He's a truly elite base stealer. Him and Cedano are really the 2 really elite base stealers left here at the bronze level. I don't love him. I'm not going to say he's unusable. He's definitely a usable card, but I've moved on from him. I'm not really using him anymore. His bat was completely silent for me. He's another one of those cards, much like what was the other one we talked about? Shoot, I forget. He's another one of those cards where your regular stuff, he's going to be okay and not kill the team. If he's on, he can really set your team up to be really successful, but he's really, really inconsistent. Platoon Keen with Cromartie and defensive replaced with Cromartie. I can see that, Poet. I can definitely see that. And so, yeah, he's a Coleman's a kidney's fave. Sorry, Blue Note, breaking your heart. Pack drop. Are you getting pack drops? Great candidate to punt left field defense. Yeah, Keen is for sure. And these results are posted. I put them on my Discord after this stream. Not the full stats, but just the lists. Number 2 is Dale Mitchell, who's the 9th most used all time. We're seeing some small sample size stuff here, but this card's starting to look a little interesting to me. Dale Mitchell. I'm going to write him down as somebody I want to get into my lineup and see what happens. Because this 345 weighted on base average over 1,400 plate appearances starts to be a little bit interesting to me. 1,400 plate appearances isn't a terribly small sample size anymore. And so you're getting a lot of singles, a lot of doubles, really solid splits versus right-handed pitching, and decent defense in left field. This is a card that I'm a little bit interesting, and I don't think you're going to get a 360 weighted on base average out of him. I don't think you're going to see a consistent 820 OPS, but if he settles into this kind of 750, 335 weighted on base average with defense that I think will come up a little bit with more of a sample size against right-handed pitching, interesting card. I haven't seen it before, so I'm going to see if I can't plug that into my lineup. You don't need an invite to my Discord. It's on my channel. You'll see my channel at the end. So and during the break, it's just Angered Unicorn on Twitch. And so I'll give you the link to that here at the end of the stream, and the Discord link should be on there. If not, I'll post it in the chat here in a little bit. Number 1 is Dominic Brown. Nope. Small sample size. This is not true. He is not the 5th best defensive left fielder. Again, small sample size stuff going on there. What he does do is hit home runs. I'm not going to sit here and say put Dominic Brown in your lineup. I don't like him as the number 1 left fielder. I think we hit all of the top 6 or 7 here. Almost everybody was on the list. Who was missing? I think Ethan Allen's the one who didn't make the list, right? Everybody else was in the top 10 over there. And so 266 for him, slugging, number 1 in slugging. I wouldn't put him in left field. Maybe a designated hitter option. Those are some pretty serious looking numbers against right-handed pitching. So maybe Dom Brown as a designated hitter option. If you're not a Coleman guy, who am I on these days? I've kind of been on the Liebold train, but Prado is interesting to me right now. I'm going to try to sneak Prado in here for a little while. I'm not sold on Keen either. I think that, these are the guys that, like, everybody throws Keen in for his bat. Everybody throws Coleman in for his defense and his speed. And I think the middle ground that you fall into is like Liebold or Prado is kind of, but this Mitchell card, I'll tell you what, this card looks interesting to me. This card looks really, really interesting to me, and I think Dale Mitchell is going to be getting a try in left field. I do like Liebold. I am a pretty big fan of Nemo Liebold. I think that he's been a pretty solid contributor to a lot of good teams. Let's find him. He came in 8th this week, but you're looking at 11,000 plate appearances with a 309 weighted on base average. He's getting some right field play too, obviously. And probably some designated hitter play as well, because his defense leaves a little bit to be desired. What I like is I can live with this defense in left field too, and so I do like Liebold as an option in left field. Center fielders, we only had 8 qualifiers. for total for this week. So Juan Pierre qualified at number 8 over 343 sample size. Decent weighted on base average. The defense is gross. This is too important of a position to have ratings like this playing every day. And he doesn't play backup, so I'm going to say no to Juan Pierre. Number 7 was Kenny Lofton. Again, you kind of fall into that. The range is okay. Can you live? Is this a range that you can live with for a bat that's just not very good? I don't think so. He's got, everything's as a center fielder, 7th and weighted on base average. I don't think the bat is good enough. The steals are great, but I just don't think this bat is good enough to compensate for this defense. Like, it's pretty bad defensively in center field, and the bat is 7th. I just don't. I don't love this Kenny Lofton card in bronze. I like the silver one. The silver Kenny Lofton is pretty good. Kirby Puckett is going to be a pretty solid defensive center fielder for you. He's going to be a pretty bad bat. So again, you kind of run into that. How badly do you want this defense? I actually think Puckett is the best defensive center fielder at bronze. The 107 rating with the 100 range is pretty stellar. And so I'm a little surprised to see him at 4th. We'll see who's higher than him. I'm going to guess that none of the guys that are on the qualifying list today are higher than him. I'm going to guess they're guys who have really small sample sizes in center field. I really think Puckett's the best defensive center fielder. Thanks, Stasnak. I appreciate it. You platoon. Who do you platoon? I missed that. We got a Cromartie for life. We've got a Davy Jones. Sorry, I got a little behind on the chat. Davy Jones is a good 63 alternative to Coleman. I don't think I saw Jones. Erstad might be better than Puckett defensively. Yeah, we'll see what happens when we get up there. Puckett, great defensively. The bat is pretty bad. Probably 6th among the guys who are going to be higher qualifiers. Number 5 is Coco Crisp. Pretty solid defense here too. 100, maybe even right up there with Kirby Puckett as with your range. 2,000 plate appearances for Crisp. He used to be my go-to in center field. It was between him and Davalillo for a while. You can see the splits lean a little bit both ways. So he is a switch hitter. So you're seeing that weird, a little bit more gap power, a little bit less power, a little bit less I, and a little bit more avoid Ks versus righties as, you know, the switch hitter goes. So, and then he's got speed to go along with it. Coco really used to be my go-to in center field. I tried Puckett out for a little bit. He killed my offense. I think Coco is a decent mix of defense and offense. And his defense should be right up there with Kirby Puckett's too, based off of ratings wise. So he's a decent option in center field, I think. At number 4, don't play Mattia Lou in center field. You can play him maybe as a backup first baseman or right fielder or designated hitter. Definitely pretty good numbers versus right-handers. I think we'll talk about him more when we get to right field. We'll see. Erstad at number 2, grading out as the number 1 defensive center fielder. So you're seeing really similar numbers, right? They're almost exactly the same to Coco Crisp. 75 arm. Crisp has 1 point of arm on Darren Erstad. So Erstad's defense is almost exactly the same as Crisp, which is a little bit better, slightly better than Puckett. You're seeing a little bit better bat here. 265 weighted on base average. And guys, just so you know, I'm working on a comparison tool. So it can be like, hey, Erstad versus Coco Crisp sometime in the coming weeks. It's the schedule has not helped me finish it yet. It's pretty easy to put together. I just haven't been able to fit it in yet. So we're seeing a 265 weighted on base average with 10 steals for Erstad. We're seeing a 253 with 16 for Crisp. So you're seeing a little bit more speed out of Crisp. We're seeing a little bit better bat out of Erstad, a little bit more power out of Erstad. So it's kind of pick your poison on these guys, right? I think that I lean Erstad just because you're going to get a little bit more offense. The speed guys who have good on base percentage and tend to really need help from the team around them, and you don't always get that. Bronze is, by its nature, bronze players are inconsistent. So players like Erstad who can play good defense and generate a little bit of offense on their own, I think have incredible value here at bronze. So I definitely lean Erstad over Crisp at this point. Number 2 is Davalillo, 89 range, 88 error, 85 center field. The arm leaves a little bit to be desired. Versus righties, he's got 73 contact, 54 gap, 70 avoid Ks. Let's compare that to Erstad, who's 60, 53, 71 with a bad eye. You got 10 points of eye. Erstad's defense is superior to Davalillo's. When we first started doing this, Davalillo was absolutely the guy. Looks like there's a lot of holdouts still. A lot of people still using Davalillo. Still pretty good offensively. He's clearly better offensively than Erstad or Crisp are. Third in weighted on base average, third in OPS, some home runs to go in there with speed. It's a really well-rounded offensive top of the order kind of card. Left-handed hitter. Versus righties, he's got some pretty big splits. Actually, not huge splits. So he can play versus everybody is part of the thing here too. And so Davalillo getting used a ton. And I like all three of them. Like, I really think that they're interchangeable almost. Not necessarily interchangeable, but they all have different reasons to play them, right? And so at number 1, let's see who's at number 1 before we make a decision here. Number 1 is Gabe Kepler. A little bit surprised here. It's got to be platoon stuff. Really small sample size for him. A 324 weighted on base average. This is a guy that you could use as your backup outfielder for sure. I can live with an 81 range and a 40 left field rating and a 32 right field rating with a decent center field rating from my backup outfielder. Or a platoon. Definitely pretty solid looking ratings versus left-handed pitching. But between the three big center fielders, I would not play Mattia in center field. I think that these plate appearances here are really people playing him as a utility and just leaving his position as a center fielder. And when I say that, let me talk about what I mean when I say that real quick. For anybody who doesn't know, top teams seem to trend Erstad. Nameless Poet likes DH for Alu. I agree. Dav Splits does it for David Donovan. Yeah, I can see Dav Splits. Dav being useful against everybody. So let me show you what I mean when I say, so when you come in here, so I know most of you watching this probably know this, but just on the off chance that people don't, when I'm getting defense and when I'm getting plate appearances on here, it comes from this. So this is what the players are listed as. So let's say you go into a tournament and you're running, this isn't my bronze tournament team. So Craig Biggio doesn't, face of the franchise Biggio doesn't play on my bronze tournament team. I don't cheat. But you can go in here and set position, right? So you change his position to second base. And so that's what I get. So for you guys who are watching, I don't remember where I had him playing. Was he at shortstop? I don't know. Maybe he was a second base or third base or something. Had to have been third base. So for those of you who are running tournaments that want me to get better defensive data especially, do me a favor, and if you think about it when you're putting your tournaments together, just set your guys up to be set to the position that you're playing them at. It would be really useful for the tournaments that you end up with me, for me. And I know that's kind of a selfish thing for me to do, but that would be super useful for me to get, now we got 400 people watching instead of the 12 that I'm used to having watch. It would be really useful for me to get more accurate defensive data, I think. The Dewey Decimals, actually, it's the Dewey Decimals 2. I got a second product license so I could run that team against the wall in bronze, in the regular quick tournaments, bronze defense, silver defense, the iron stuff, is the Dewey Decimals 2. The logo is similar, but not, it's the big blue D. So if you happen to see me in a tournament with you, say hi and hope that you get it done. What about the DH? For your DH, just pick one. It doesn't matter. The DH doesn't really matter. I don't do designated hitters right now just because there's not enough people. Not everybody sets them to designated hitter. I don't think anybody sets them to designated hitter besides maybe Don Newcomb. So I can't separate them out into their own category. So just maybe for your DHs, pick their worst defensive position or best defensive. It doesn't really matter. I'll figure it out while I'm parsing through the information. Pump uses Cuckoo at DH. Interesting. People spamming tourneys to collect data that mess it up. Yeah, probably. That's me. Wait, Luke, that's me. Gabermetrics #1 in center field. Yeah, I like Kepler, but I do see I like him as a utility. I really do think Kepler is a fantastic utility outfielder, and I'm surprised to see not too many people using him. He does have the splits versus lefties. This was a small sample size. Don't expect a 324 weighted on base average out of him, but I think he's a solid bat that can play backup for you in center field every couple days and be pretty good in left field and right field for you too. Right fielders, we're almost done. Keen comes in at number 10. You can see already Cedano, the #1. Keen is... He kind of, we've talked about him a lot. He kind of is what he is. If I'm going to play him, I'm probably going to play him in left field. Doesn't show up in the top 10 used in right field. Just happened to be number 10 this week. Number 9, Brad Hopp. With 486 plate appearances, doesn't make the lists, but put up a 334 weighted on base average this week, which is pretty darn solid. I'm not going to lie. Over 486 plate appearances. 320 weighted on base average, but that's kind of middle of the pack. He does hit home runs. 35 home runs per 600 plate appearances is a ton at this level. That is a lot of home runs. Over 1,500 plate appearance sample size. That's a lot. That's a lot of home runs. I don't know that it stays that high, but he is a bat versus right-handed pitching. Maybe a designated hitter. I don't know that this is pretty close to punting in right field, and it's pretty close to being numbers that I'm not comfortable with in right field, if I'm being totally honest, even with a bat that good. The avoid Ks is kind of low. Again, there's a lot of stuff pitchers in these tournaments, so that avoid Ks is a little bit low to me. You're seeing a ton of strikeouts from him, but man, that's a lot of home runs to say I'm not interested at all. Oh well. Number 8 is Cedano. So you can see he's the most used right fielder. I think he's getting used as a designated hitter as well, so keep that in mind. Pretty bad defensively in right field, but the offense makes up for it. So right field and left field is a place where I want to try to get some offense out of, and Cedano is pretty solid there. But even in right field, you're seeing 311 weighted on base average, has him 10th this week, which is crazy. The steals with the on-base percentage, though, really kind of help him out a little bit. It's a solid on-base percentage with a lot of steals. He's an elite base stealer. I like I said before, he really transformed my team from one that was kind of mucking through to one that could compete every time. He's really consistent, is really the biggest thing I can say about Cedano at this point. He is very, very consistent and almost always performs. There's some guys that you're going to see slightly higher numbers from over the course of the week, or a little bit, the Coleman with the 8 billion steals. There's guys who hit home runs. But the one thing I will say about Cedano is that he performs in every single tournament. He's just so steady in every single tournament that I really feel like Ozzy is the one card that I'm like, get him onto your team. Cedano's on that next tier. You can win without Cedano for sure. I think it's possible to win without Cedano, but he's a seriously consistent card that doesn't play great defense, but you kind of want him in your lineup somewhere. Nameless Poet likes to DH him. Home run hitters are super inconsistent. Agreed. That's what I would guess out of Hop too. Is you're going to get those home runs, but he's going to get out on every other plate appearance. Right? The eye is so. If these were the opposite, if he had a lower eye and a high avoid Ks, I'd be like, holy smokes, this card has to be in the lineup because. He's not going to walk, but he's going to be putting the ball in play, and it's going to be a lot of home runs. But the fact that the avoid Ks is low and the eye is high really gives me pause on Brad Hopp. And so, interesting looking card. I don't love it, but I might try it out. And so Cedano is just really consistent, is my feelings on Cedano. You play him in right field, no mercy, burn it to the ground. Agree. I tend to like him in right field because I feel like you can coax a little bit more offense than this out of your designated hitter. I don't think you're wrong to play him as a designated hitter because he does drive the game by himself. It's not a high walk driven. He does walk quite a bit, but it's not a high walk driven on base percentage that's just going to eat up your base paths, right? Even when he's walking and getting on base by walking, he's stealing bases for you. And so he does drive the offense on his own. Thank you. He's the kind of guy that I can live with as a DH. Vince Coleman, like for instance, Vince Coleman, who has not a similar batting profile, but is kind of in there for the same reasons as Cedano, these steals, right? He doesn't get on base enough, and his on base percentage is driven so much by walks that I think he's kind of useless. You really need to be playing Vince Coleman for his defense. Whereas Cedano, I feel like as a designated hitter, can drive the offense on his own. But I like to get a little bit more of a bat in there as my designated hitter. This 321 or this 21st in slugging is a little bit scary to me. You can see it's really low, 21 out of 23, but he just does everything else so well offensively that he really kind of needs to be in your lineup. Number 7 is Mike Marshall. We talked about him at first base. I disagree with this. He's not a good zone rating in right field. He's not a good defensive right fielder, so he gains a little bit of value because of that. And his bat just doesn't quite play up in right field either. He does rank 7th right now, but that's, you got some home runs, the weighted on base average, but he's gaining a lot because he's driving so much because his defense is such a mess right now. Again, decent bat versus right field. I'm not going to say don't play him in right field. These are ratings that if you really just want his bat against right-handed pitching, I don't think he's going to kill your team out there, but just keep in mind that he's not that good defensively in right field. Number 6 is Carl Taylor, another guy who's this is an interesting guy to me to see here. 51 range with a 46 rating in right field is not terrible. The 22 errors is scary in right field. A lot more scary than the 19 error at first base. Carl Taylor starts to look like a guy who can maybe play against left-handed pitching and be a utility guy at the corner outfield spots and first base for me. But again, the split versus lefties is a little concerning too. So with Carl Taylor, I'm just not sure. I'm not sold on him. He doesn't get a lot of play in right field, which is where you're seeing this kind of mess from. I actually don't think that's accurate either. He's probably slightly better than that, but a 335 weighted on base average this week, 327 all time. Taylor's interesting to me. I don't think I have him on the team anywhere, but I might have to try starting him out. That 320 plus weighted on base average starts to look pretty good. No speed really. A little bit of power though. Who knows? I don't know what to say about Carl Taylor. Number 5 is Andy Van Slyke. I'm glad to see him back on the list. I'm not going to lie. Van Slyke with 453 plate appearances. People have moved on from him, but I do. And he just had a monster week this week in those 453 plate appearances. I definitely think people have moved on from him. Early on, he was an interesting card, especially versus righties now, though, because he's got that speed, right? He's one of probably the top 6 or 7 most prolific base stealers here at Bronze. But nothing really jumps out at you. The 286 on base percentage is not very good. He steals bases and hits home runs. He's got a 266 on base percentage all time, over 2,000 plate appearances. He was one of those guys that showed up early on, and back when steals were getting way too overrated, he had some play on the list, but he's interesting to me. I don't know that he's terribly useful anymore, which is sad. Joe Mauer for first base. Interesting. Mauer at first base. Mauer definitely gets some play at first base. You platoon Taylor and Alou at first. I can absolutely see Taylor and Alou being a first base platoon. Number 4 is Bake McBride. Man, do I love this card here in these tournaments. 77 range, 43 arm. 87 error for right field, a 74 rating in right field, 318 weighted on base average, little bit of power, 13 home runs, not gonna walk ever, 19 walks per 600 plate appearances, ranks number 6 all time. He's the number 5th used all time. I have a weird feeling that this is because he showed up on my list a month and a half ago when we did it. I started using him. I think this card's cool. 70 contact, 78 gap, 61 avoid Ks against righties in these bronze tournaments is pretty solid. With the 77 range and the 74 right field rating, you got some offense there. You got some defense there. This is probably inaccurate. I'm going to guess he's closer to average in right field. There's some weird right field is probably the position that defense looks the weirdest for me. And I'm not positive why. I haven't had a chance to do more research into the numbers that I'm getting in right field to figure out why the right field ratings are so weird to me. But McBride is probably closer to average in right field. I think the range is actually pretty good. With it, man, these numbers versus right-handed pitching they're awesome. I really like those ratings. The numbers aren't stacking up. He's not playing as well as I had hoped. Ninth in on base average, 8th in weighted on base average, 9th in steals. I suspect you can coax a little bit more than that out of him. Probably not too much with, the Lava and / Boone catching platoons these days, which, BJ Surhoff's not the catcher everywhere anymore, guys. So you can't steal as much down here. I haven't seen a single negative steal, so people are taking my advice, I think, and setting the guys who shouldn't steal up to not steal, which is good. 4.29 WAR per 600 for Bake McBride. This card just looks like it should perform, and it just doesn't to me. But I like this card. I think McBride's decent. Yeah, the arm in right field leaves a lot to be desired. But how much do you lose for that, I guess, is my question. And so that's kind of one of those things where that's pretty low. That's pretty bad for right field. But yeah, you got the Cedanos, the Colemans are going to go first to third on them every time they're on base, which is concerning. The sac flies are going to hurt. There's a lot of fly balls here, so that's going to hurt you on sac flies. If his bat was performing, I'd be like, I can live with that, right? If his bat was doing what I feel like this should do, then I could live with that, but it's not. And I think this is probably my fault. This is probably all me, actually, now that I think about it. And he's so maybe I might not be platooning him. He definitely looks like he should have a platoon in right field, which is another kind of reason to lean away from him too. But it's an interesting looking card as a platoon in right field for me. Number 3 is Gary Carter. We talked about him at catcher. Talk about him a little bit in right field. I don't think he's a right fielder. Again, this is probably a relic of him getting listed as a right fielder, even though he's probably playing catcher more than he's playing right field. Let's be honest. I'm going to guess that most of these plate appearances are as a catcher. So you're seeing some weird balls in play or whatever. He's getting some weird stuff because of his catcher defense here in right field. He's not the 4th best defensive right fielder in bronze, but the bat is against lefties. Really interesting looking bat versus lefties. I don't love it versus righties, so we're just going to move on. Number 2 is Paul Wainer at number 2 with weighted on base average this week of 342, which is well above his 328. Pretty small sample size of just 900 plate appearances. Are people maybe playing him in left field as well to hurt his defense? Who's this, McBride? The possibility exists that people are playing him in left field where he would definitely lose some of that defensive value. Matt, welcome to the stream, Matt. Nice to see you. Wish he played left. Yeah, if McBride played left, he'd be awesome. That would be a stellar card in theory, but you've seen the game do some strange stuff. Not positive what that was in response to. There is no giveaway going right now. I can't do one. It's not on my Streamlabs, so I got to figure out how to do that for these streams. I'm going to have giveaways for you guys soon, I promise. Wainer comes in at number 2. Decent ratings versus righties, guys. 78, 59, 51, 55, 93. The defense is terrifying in right field. 46 range with a 47 error, with a 49 arm, with a 48 or a 38 right field rating is really concerning to me. To the point that he almost looks unplayable as a right fielder. I know I talk about punting defense in right field. The fact that he doesn't do anything well is pretty scary to me. I don't. borderline. We'll call him borderline. I love this bat. This bat looks awesome. 436 slugging, second in OPS, second in weighted on base average, mid-teens in home runs. You got a little bit of speed to go along with it. Not going to strike out ever. Middle of the pack in walks. You got fifth in WAR per 600. Wainer is a really interesting looking card that I'm going to try to get on my team. Yeah, I wouldn't put him in right field. Interesting looking as a DH versus right-handed pitching though. So I'm going to try to get him more plate appearances for the next time we circle around back to bronze, which will probably be in a month or so. So that's Wainer at number 2. Who's number 1? I'm concerned about this. Nelson Cruz. What? 300 plate appearances for him. Hits a lot of home. Oh my God. 60 home runs per 600 plate appearances. If you want home runs, get Nelson Cruz into your lineup. My goodness. 47 home runs over 1,100 plate appearances. Going to be really inconsistent. Again, lots of strikeouts. So in short-term tournaments, I don't know how usable he actually is. The range is okay for right field. They're decent-ish in left field. Gross was not on the top 10. We're going to go back and do Gross. I'm going to show you guys what I have for Gross because he did not make the top 10. I looked at that today. So that was one. So I usually just speed through the lists, right? And take a look at what's there, make sure everything looks good down here. Today, it was noticeable to me that Greg Gross didn't make the list because I know how much people love Greg Gross. So we're going to go like this, and we're going to find him. And he came in at 16, which is wrong. So let's talk about Greg Gross. We're going to talk about Pilar too before we move on to the pitchers. Greg Gross is a good defensive right fielder. He did not have a good week. His weighted on. So let me talk about how I do my rankings here too. And this is not correct. Again, we talk about defense, and the problem is that defense was weird. So this is something where I could totally delete the defense, and Greg Gross probably comes out way higher. Or I think I might need to figure out a way to do defense by ratings instead of by zone rating. Is probably what my next project is going to be, and that's going to take some time, so don't expect it next week. Greg Gross is a really good right fielder. Third in average, third in on base percentage, 11th in weighted on base average, which is he's a singles doubles kind of hitter. He's not going to strike out very much. Fifth among right fielders, which we got 40 qualifying right fielders, guys. Everybody plays right field. Fifth in strikeouts, fifth in walks this week, which is a little bit, everything's right in line with his stuff. Not going to hit home runs, but he's going to play better defense than this. I don't know where this came from. I don't know how this happened. I have to do some research. I will show Liebold in right field too as well. Chat loves Gross. They do. I love Gross. I think Gross is pretty good. Kidneys is sad. Yeah. And did we see White? We didn't. So right field defense again is an issue right now. So let's go here. So Baumholtz came in 15th. Here's Pilar. Who's showing 8th best defensively. I think Pilar is probably one of the better defensive right fielders. It's weird. But Pilar, the problem with Pilar is that his splits trend towards left-handed pitching, right? And so this is okay, not great. The bat for Pilar is not looking good right now. And then we have Devon White was here. So Devon White's showing second defensively. So at least we've got Devon White showing second defensively, which makes sense out of, all this stuff. And so, but his bat is leaving a little bit to be desired. The combination, again, that combination of a poor eye plus a poor avoid K is a little bit concerning. And the fact that his splits tend towards left-handed pitching. He is a switch hitter, but the weighted on base average of 292. The slugging is pretty good at 409. No, that's wrong. That wasn't. Yeah, slugging is above league average, but there's a lot of slugging in right field too. So keep in mind we have 40 all-time qualifiers in right field, which is just an absurd number. So he hit some home runs, so he's in the top third of right fielders with home runs, and he's really solid defensively too. So let's see. Let's compare him with Gross, 59, 60, 75 against lefties. Let's go back to Gross real quick. And Gross versus righties. I could see a platoon of White and Gross. I think that, Pilar covers center field as well. Miller. Don Mueller is right here at 17. Another interesting defensive guy, a little bit lagging behind the other guys. The other thing to keep in mind is that there are 40 people qualifying all time, so that's messing with the right field numbers. The other ones you'd see in like 15, 16. I feel like everybody puts the guys who they don't know what to do with in right field, which is probably messing up the right field numbers as well. So I think, like I said, I think my next project is to go based off of ratings, defensive ratings instead of zone rating, because the zone rating is just so hard. Mueller against right-handed pitching looks interesting. A 305 weighted on base average is pretty solid. The slugging is really good. Lots of home runs with pretty decent defense. This is honestly a card I haven't noticed before, and I actually kind of like the way it looks. It's going to be singles and home runs. He's not going to strike out. He won't walk. The on-base percentage is going to be pretty low. And the batting average is probably going to stay pretty low too. 233, 225 all time. Lots of home runs with decent defense in right field. That super low on-base percentage is a little bit scary to me. He's a fly ball hitter, so if he's not, and he doesn't have a ton of speed, so if he's not hitting home runs, he's going to be getting out. Is the problem with Mueller. For me, if I'm going to pick a right fielder, holy smokes, it's tough. Like, I feel like right field is kind of like a pick your poison kind of thing here at Bronze. I don't think there's really one that sets himself apart. Again, you've got the Cedano that if you really need to get a better bat in at DH, then you can live with Cedano's defense in right field. Gross is pretty good. Pilar, man, I wish McBride performed the way I wanted him to. I'm really sad about that, but yeah, Puckett in right field. I don't think I have anything on Puckett in right field. Yeah, I don't have anything on Puckett in right field. Unfortunately. So that's something, if you want to see if I can find stuff. Puckett, we saw Puckett in center field, and we saw his bat and how it relates to these. Puckett's bat is pretty bad. Jesus Alou, I think I just saw him at number 11. Good versus lefties. I'm going to guess he's getting platoon, so maybe you want to platoon him with some of those other guys. Decent defense, again, similar to McBride defensively, where he's got decent range, decent error, but a pretty poor arm for a right fielder. This is a card that if it was a left fielder card, probably gets a lot more play. 308 weighted on base average. And again, even in this period, like if we go to center field, you had 8 qualify. Right field has 23. Like you're seeing more right fielders qualify than pitchers. It's ridiculous. So, yeah, those are your right fielders. Did I show Liebold? I did not. Let's find Liebold. Liebold right here. Liebold came out 21 among right fielders. So we saw him in left field, and we liked him as a left fielder. He's hurting a little bit. I don't know that he's that bad. But still, weighted on base average 19th, 5th in on base percentage, though. I do like Nemo. You got some decent speed with pretty good on base percentage here. He's going to walk more than anybody else in right field and not strike out very much. So if you're looking for a top of the order, kind of maybe a number 2 hitter, maybe a leadoff guy with that kind of on base percentage that plays okay defense in right field, I think that Liebold is a pretty solid option too. I do like Nemo in right field. I think right field is probably the position that's the hardest to like separate one guy from the rest, because there's nobody that really does. I know you've got Cedano with 37,000 plate appearances. A lot of that is going to be designated hitter. Gross. I really don't think you can go wrong with too many of these guys. None of them are going to kill you. None of them are really going to set you apart. Even Cedano, like I think you really need. I think Cedano's bat is almost necessary in the lineup, but not necessarily as a right fielder. You can put him in as a designated hitter, kind of stuff like that. But I think you can win without him too. So that's my feelings on your right fielders. So there you go. Let's talk about pitchers. Can we talk about pitchers now? My wife gave me a pizza roll, so I'm going to eat it before it gets too cold. Sorry about that. Moving on to the pitchers. Starting pitchers at number 15 is Earl Wilson. He's your number 5 most used pitcher. He is a right-handed pitcher. He is a neutral finesse pitcher. high stuff, really low movement, decent control. Pitching qualifiers, I had that up there. It was 33. Let me make sure of that. So if we go here and over to here, our highest, we had 24 qualifying starting pitchers. And when we get to the relief pitchers, remember this number, that's not the one I needed to click on. We had 21 qualifying relief pitchers for the purposes of this. Starting pitchers, Wilson came in at number 15. He is the 5th most used pitcher. He ranks 26th all time. There's a lot more than 21 qualifiers all time, but he's 26th all time. So 24th in FIP, 23rd in ERA. I made everything else a lot lower counting towards stuff this week. So you'll hopefully see decent numbers when we get up top, instead of like the guys who were like 15th in earned run average, but first in strikeouts being number 2. So hopefully the numbers make a little bit more sense. Wilson's a guy who's been used from the start. He's been one of those kind of 3, 4, 5 pitchers that's been consistent. Is really what I've seen people get out of Earl Wilson. He's always kind of, he is not prone to blow ups. He's just kind of consistently right there in the low to mid 3 earned run averages, and is a pretty solid innings eater for just about everybody who uses him. He comes in at number 15 with a 3.92 ERA and a 3.56 FIP over our current period. Number 14 is Neil Heaton. Your 4th most used pitcher. And keep in mind that some of this is probably large sample size relics too. So these guys at the top have pitched a lot more than the guys that you're going to see kind of further down the list, which probably isn't helping. Heaton is really solid at home run suppression. He's 7th there. 322 earned run average has him 5th, but the 353 FIP drops him back just a little bit. Doesn't strike anybody out and walks people. He's a lower stuff, good movement, good control pitcher. Cedano always in the field because of what? Because of I can't seem to not do Newcomb and Wilson in a starting pitcher DH role. Interesting. I haven't looked at Wilson as a hitter. I'm going to be totally honest. Maybe if we have time, I will do that at the end. Heaton at number 14. At number 13 is Doug Bird. Holy smokes. We got 3 guys in the top 10 used here in the bottom third of the list. That's a little concerning. Good stuff. Lower movement. Pretty good control for Doug Bird. Really good control for Doug Bird. Right there on the border of the top 5. 12th in earned run average, 9th in FIP. He does rank 9th overall. This is an 86% start percentage for Doug Bird. Any chance I could also collect ground ball percentage data? Let me write that down and see what I can do. You want that for pitchers, I assume? Ground ball percentage data. I'm not currently collecting that. That might be something that waits until Out of the Park 22. I will see. That might wait because I've got a pretty decent pitching or a pretty decent sample size on this stuff right now, and I'm not, as far as I know, collecting ground ball data. Let me find out. Earn runs. I will have to look into that. I'll look into the ground ball stuff. And I will see if I can, for pitchers, an interesting stat you like to pay attention to. I agree. I think it's a really interesting stat that I would like to add. I'm going to have to, it's probably, that's going to take some work, I think, because I don't think it tracks. I don't think there's a way for me to parse ground ball. It would just be percentage. Oh, man, I can figure that out, but it's not going to be soon. Because they don't track ground balls versus balls in play, I don't think. Let me go in here and check. Sortable stats. View. Pitching stats. Games finished. Let's see. ground balls, pitches thrown. So there's ground balls, fly balls, ground out percentage. Because I could do, I'll have to look into it a little bit more, because ground out percentage would be, I couldn't do that over time. I can't take rate stats and turn them into anything useful. So it would have to be something like ground balls divided by ground balls plus fly balls, but I don't know if that would totally ignore line drives. I'll look into it. I'll look into it and see if I can figure it out. What's up, Coach Moore? I haven't seen you in forever. It's good to see you, man. I got the flow going on. You're in my Diamond League? I'm sorry. My team is awful, so hopefully my team was not ready to come back to Diamond. Good to see you, Coach Moore, and welcome, Admiral. Hopefully you do better than my team in Diamond. Doug Bird at 13. Yeah, I'll see what I can do. It's not going to be ready anytime soon. That's something I might try to get for the start of Out of the Park 22, because the one thing I don't want to do right now with this data set is add columns to the data, because it'll mess with my sheets and stuff. And so I have a really good sample size on stuff right now that I've been going with. And so I don't want to start over now, but obviously we're starting over for Out of the Park 22. So I'll see what I can work in there. Not worse than yours. Dead last. Congratulations. That's a good draft pick. Basketball season was a grind for Coach Moore. Well, it's good to see him, man. I hope it was a good season. Number 12 is Yoshi, who is 15th all-time, 353 FIP, 329 earned run average over this period. Lower in strikeouts, 13th in strikeouts. Again, we had 24 qualifiers, so kind of middle of the pack in strikeouts. Good home run suppression, which is a little surprising, but right in line with his all-time at .53, and then 2.12 walks per 9 innings for Yoshi. At number 11 is Zach Greinke, your number one most used starting pitcher. Why is he number 11? Well, he had a rough week. That's not true. It's right in line with his all-time stuff. So one thing I want you to pay attention to as we're going through this list, because I don't account for it, is this number right here. I don't factor in start percentage. I probably should figure out a way to do that. Almost all of Greinke's appearances are as a starting pitcher. So keep that in mind as we go through the rest of the list and we see some guys higher up on the list with lower earned run averages. And the reason I say that is because I do not currently parse them out. I do not currently parse out pitch games as a starter versus games as a reliever. The reason I don't do that right now is because it's nearly impossible for me to do. I tried doing that, but again, it kind of led to the same thing with the defense, where if he was listed as a relief pitcher, then all of the innings I got were as a relief pitcher. Whereas if he's listed as a starter, then all the innings I got were as a starter. And so I'm unable right now to kind of parse out how they pitch as a starter versus as a reliever. It just wasn't accurate enough for me to be happy with it. So what I'm doing instead is I'm just taking all of their innings and then you get their start percentage. And that's how they make the starting pitcher list versus the relief pitcher list. Anybody above 50% goes on the starting pitcher list. Anybody below goes on the relief pitcher list. Yeah, and then there's the openers as well, which cause an issue as well. So keep that in mind as we're going through the list, because Greinke is a little bit lower than you would have expected to see him. Also keep in mind that he is very, very consistent. 349 right here. And all time we have, I'm going to get that number for you, actually, because I do want that number. And it will be up there for the next one as well. Pitching stats right here. All time we have 34 qualifying starting pitchers and 44 qualifying relief pitchers. So when you see Greinke here at 13th, even though it looks like really similar to this is telling me that he's super consistent. So you're going to see some guys higher on the list who are going to be a little bit lower down here. Greinke is probably the most consistent bronze pitching performer I've seen throughout the entire time I've been doing these streams. He is always, always, always on the list. He was number one for a really long time back when I did. So when I first started doing this, I didn't. Man, guys, I've learned so much about how to make this stuff work over the last 6 months or so. It makes my brain hurt just thinking about it. But for those who were here at the start, all I had at the start was the individual tournaments. And so instead of looking at the numbers like this, the all-time numbers, I was just looking at consistency. And so that's kind of how this whole thing kind of started. And so I don't have those streams anymore because they're gross. I had a lot less hair back then, which was nice. But all I had was, I called it success or dud percentage and success rate is what they came out to. And Greinke was always at the top of the list. He was always number one when all I was looking at was consistency. And he's just far superior to pretty much everybody else. There was at the time, Brent Suter was up there too. Suter's obviously a silver card now, so we don't have the option to use him down here at bronze. But it was Greinke and Suter, and then everybody else just kind of got in line behind them. And so keep that in mind. Greinke is probably the most consistent performing. I had much more hair. Yeah, it's already starting. It comes out already. Greinke does better with good defense behind him, correct. He's not a super high strikeout pitcher, but he's not going to walk people. Number one all time in walk prevention. He's not great at home run prevention, so you really need to have a good defense behind him. So I agree. He's just been pretty stellar since the time I started doing this. So to see him at number 11 right now makes me a little bit sad. Not going to lie. Number 10 is, holy smokes, Vic Aldridge at number 10. Again, start percentage of 81%, 79% all time, dropped to 373 earned run average, 354 fifth this week, 373 all time, 350 all time. You know what you're going to get with them pretty much. He's kind of the reverse of Greinke. He's going to let up some walks, but he's going to strike a ton of guys out and still do an okay job of suppressing home runs, but not great. Both of them will allow home runs. He's just not going to, Aldridge isn't going to allow the successive hits, whereas Greinke is not going to allow walks to compound situations. They're two different but pretty consistent pitchers. Vic has been, when Vic Aldridge is on, he will win tournaments for you on his own. But Vic Aldridge has a tendency to blow up too, so keep that in mind. He's not nearly as consistent as Greinke. Small sample size brigade coming up in the starting pitching list, which, so there's going to be a little bit of a small sample size brigade coming up in the starting pitchers. I adjusted it a little bit this week because I didn't want to see like the 40 inning pitched guys at the top. I do have bronze tournaments take off all the time, so I do get a lot of data on these. And so we'll see who's in the top 10. Definitely going to be a little bit of a small sample size issue going on. Chirinos has been consistently on my list since the start as well. He was right up there with the Brent Suter as one of the useful live cards. There aren't a ton of useful live cards in bronze like there are in iron, but Chirinos has been one who's been consistently pretty useful. Right now, 3rd in earned run average, 10th and 5th this week. What is he losing points for? What's he dropping down to number 9 for? Well, it's the FIP is hurting him a little bit, but it's really, he doesn't strike too many guys out. He does let up some home runs, and he's not really in that top tier of preventing walks. He's pretty close, right on the border of that top tier of walks, but so he gets hurt just a little bit by that stuff. He's 12th all time, and you're seeing that 349 FIP, the 310 earned run average. Right now, the 7th most used. Still a pretty solid and a pretty useful card, and a pretty consistent performer as well. You're seeing that stuff control. And again, once you get up to silver, like the movement, you can live with low movement here because you're seeing that the 9 home runs per 600. My goodness. So next week, we're going to see a different tournament format that I've never done on stream before. I'm really, really excited about it, and we're going to see what happens. But you're going to see guys with low movement get lit up in that tournament format, the silver snapshots. I'm really excited for that. Let's see. Might be too much work, but it would be cool to see what kind of stuff boost these guys get going to the pen. I can do that. That wouldn't be that much work because I have the ratings are on 2 separate things, and all I would have to do is add another column. I can do that. I have room for it, and it should be pretty easy. So I'll see if I can get that for you next week, Takade Pete, and see what I can do. What is the timer for first drop in every other pack after that? 15, 20. Face of the franchise, Alomar Biggio for sure. On face of the franchise. I don't do a lot of perfect team stuff with the main team, but I'm pretty sure that Biggio is the go-to over Alomar. But yeah, if you can get like Jackie Robinson, you're probably better off. Number 8 on starting pitchers is Rick Williams, which is an interesting card to me that I haven't seen. Doesn't get a ton of use, only 324 innings. I said the cutoff at 200 innings, I think. So we are going to see some smaller samples, but Williams, number 1 in home run suppression, so he gains a little bit there. 5th and 5th, 11th in earned run average, so pretty solid numbers right there. Outpitched his ERA just a little bit this week. My lizard is acting crazy right now. We just got a 6-month-old translucent bearded dragon. He's pretty awesome. He doesn't like me very much yet, so he doesn't get to be on stream with me just yet. Someday he'll be on stream. Also, the door is cracked in case the cat wants to come in. I don't know what he's doing right now. He's being a nut. Oh, I hope that didn't hurt. Good movement, good control. So a little bit different than some of the other pitchers that we see in this format. And so had a good week this week. The FIP is right in line with his all-time FIP. The ERA, he outpitched it just a little bit. Got him up to number 8 for this week. Bad individual pitch ratings. So he does have bad individual pitch ratings. A little bit of a finesse pitcher, slower pitches. So yeah, I don't love the individual pitch ratings. They're really, really bad. He doesn't really have a good pitch, but he has a ton of movement, which is probably helping to induce the weak contact. Really wisey here. Home run suppression is a thing. It's definitely a skill that's useful even in bronze. I think that this is the kind of pitcher thing that would work better in some of the higher tournaments and some of the ones that have more home runs. However, if this was a low strikeout, high home run environment, he'd be pretty good. Number 7 is Aaron Civale, your 9th most used pitcher. 4 pretty good pitches here for Civale. Let's see. Angered Dragon. Yeah, he always looks angry. It's kind of the thing they do. Plays tons of positions, steals bases, and consistent. Who are we talking about? DMB for Biggio. Gotcha. Yeah, Biggio does play up at other positions too. And so Civale's an interesting card to me. He's got a little bit more movement than some of the other guys we've seen on the list. He is ranking 7th all time with a 342 FIP and a 351 earned run average. 0.5 home runs allowed, solid control, solid strikeouts, top half in strikeouts as well. He just kind of does everything consistently. The hold runners is a little bit low, but again, that stolen base number in this format is coming down a little bit. The stamina is a little bit low too. So these numbers are probably improved a little bit because you're seeing a 79% starting percentage as opposed to the Greinke and the Aldridge, who are up above 80 and 90. So Civale, but still 79% is pretty high. It's not like one of those 51% guys where it would be really concerning. We have one of those on the list. So Bill Greif at number 6. Greif, I before E except before C or when sounding like A. So Greif. Bill Greif is what I'm going to go with based off of my elementary school teaching. Really high control, 75 control. The walks are not as good as I would have expected them to be based off of that. The movement's okay, high stuff, high control, 40 movement. This week was a 309 earned run average with a 346 FIP. All-time a 310 with a 339, ranks 5th all-time, right in line with his all-time numbers. 87% starting percentage. Looks pretty solid to me, Bill Greif. 902 innings pitched, so still a little bit of a smallish sample size, but it's enough that I think that you can kind of plan your stuff off of that. And it's not like a 50 innings pitched aberration that we expect to see. So Greif, unless it's German, then it sounds more like the second vowel, which would be Greif, right? Greif, yeah, I give up. Let's see, he pitched in 1973, so he's probably not going to come after me for butchering his name, or maybe he will. I don't know. Willie Adams, not even on the list here. 1996, one-hit wonder. Great fastball, great curveball, okay sinker, 3 pitches only, which I think is why people shy away from him a little bit. But he's got solid stuff, good movement, and pretty good control to go along with it. 347 FIP over 800 innings pitched in this period. Just missed the top 10. 356, 368 over 2,100 innings total. So yeah, he's probably right in the top 15 used pitchers if we're trying to extrapolate stuff out. 7th and 8th in earned run average and FIP isn't bad. 21st is a little lower all-time in the 358. So he outpitched his all-time stuff just a little bit. He ranked 16th all-time, but had a good week this week for Willie Adams. Solid strikeouts, pretty decent home run percentage, but I think that's the aberration from this week is the home run suppression. So we'll see. He's closer to 0.6 all-time. Interesting looking card to me. I don't know that he keeps it up. Number 4 is Dustin May. Third most used, 82% start percentage. This percentage is coming up. People are using him as a starter much more than they used to. Used to get a lot of use as a relief pitcher. I think people are living with the 5 to 6 innings and then getting into that bullpen. May has phenomenal stuff. 5th all-time in strikeouts, 4th in strikeouts for this period. The home run suppression is still pretty good for him. Kind of top half. The 49 movement is okay. Part of that is that he's a ground ball pitcher. So that's really useful, especially since we know that Ozzy is pretty clearly the best defensive player here. And so if you're running a good defense with Hewlett at third base, Ozzy at short, Kaz Matsui at second, you're probably going to help your pitcher out quite a bit if you're using Dustin May. 65 sinker, 70 cutter, that changeup and the curveball. You got 2 velocity pitches, 2 off-speed pitches to go along with it. I like Dustin May. He's a mainstay in my rotation right now. George Stone shows up at number 3. Weird, right? He's a finesse pitcher with 90 to 92 miles an hour, over 415 innings pitched. So again, a smallish sample size, but a 295 earned run average for him. This is a weird one to me and a wicked aberration, but guys, number 1 all time, over 1,100 innings pitched. So you're looking at, he's probably there in the top 20, dropping a 306 earned run average, a 330 FIP. I don't know how he's doing it because the home run suppression isn't great. It's just the control is really, really solid. That's why you don't play live cards. Worst day in bronze was when May went up to silver. No, that's not true. Worst day in bronze was when Brent Suter went up to silver. Suter was incredible in bronze and then went up to silver, and all of a sudden I had to scramble. Suter was so much better than May. I was seeing 2.5 to 3 earned run average. He wasn't just competitive among live cards. Brent Suter was like the bronze pitcher. It was ridiculous. He was so good. He's pitching well in silver too, as far as I can tell. Not as good as he was in bronze, but he was so good. That made me sad when he went up to silver. I was like, coronavirus had Brent Suter as my starting pitcher up until July, which was nice. George Stone. I'm not sure, guys. What do you guys think about George Stone? Talk to me here because I'm not sold on this card, but the numbers that I'm seeing are just nuts. The home runs is a little bit concerning. So he came back to the earth a little bit over this period. Only a 57% start percentage too. So I think maybe as a bullpen piece, George Stone is probably a little bit better. This is the lowest start percentage that we've seen out of most of the guys in this list. And so I think that's contributing a lot to this. When we look at it on its face, it's got to be contributing to a lot. If you have versus lefty platoon set up, he is a left-handed pitcher. So yeah, that's interesting. Also, with all of the right hand, that's probably helping him out a little bit too right now, is that there's so few left-handed pitchers being thrown that you're seeing a lot of left-hand heavy lineups. So yeah, if you have a good versus lefty platoon hit, he's going to get hit really hard. I think I lean towards George Stone as a bullpen piece. I think he can be really useful against that lineup that's been facing righties, because you're only going to have, what, 2 or 3 guys on the bench who are going to come in to face a lefty specialist. But that's definitely where he's getting all his stuff, is just because he's such an aberration in the format. So the Keens and the Cruzes would take Stone out. Sid starts him. He's solid every tournament as a starter for Po Daddy. Interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. So we'll see. I might see if I can get him into the rotation. I don't know if I have him in my rotation right now. I really just started throwing that team at the wall. Number 2, Nate Eovaldi, which is surprising to me. You can see he doesn't even have enough innings to qualify all time. So this is one of those guys, right? He's right on the cusp of being a starter/reliever. Really interesting. Probably has a pretty good stuff bump out of the pen. I'm gonna guess versus righties. He's gonna have a pretty good stuff bump. 75 stamina, 95 hold. He does have 5 pitches, which also plays up a little bit out of the pen. The NAs here are because there's just too much involved in trying to figure out, because these numbers, because he's at a 49%, his numbers for all time are listed under the starting rankings. And so if I gave you rankings here, it would be his rankings as a reliever rankings. So his rankings here would be among relief pitchers and not starting pitchers. So it just wouldn't make sense to have him on there. But this time, right at 50%, so expect that to come up quite a bit, but he qualified this time. I don't think he's the number 2 starting pitcher. I think he's pretty solid as a relief pitcher, though. Eovaldi's a hold king. I will never have a bad thing to say about Nate Eovaldi after the 2018 World Series. Fair Territory is talking about his bullpen. Suter, Witachik, Cruz, Daly, Guardado, Koch, Gelnar, and Sherry. I like it. That's a pretty good looking bullpen. Richard Blyer will qualify in relief, but you doubt it. Let's see who's number 1. I really don't know. Tristan McKenzie came out number 1. Again, start percentage at 56, 59% all time. So a lower start percentage, but serious numbers on McKenzie here. 788 innings pitched. Leaves him outside of here. Again, that's probably largely because relief, but serious numbers for a guy that's almost 60% start percentage. 3.04 FIP, 323 earned run average. Again, I wish that I could extrapolate out as a starter easier. There's no way for me to... Actually, now that I think about it, I'm kind of curious. I'm going to go open up a tournament real quick. I'm kind of curious about something. That I shouldn't have opened that one. It's going to take a minute. So McKenzie at number 1. Yeah, I think he's phenomenal. He's got 2 awesome pitches. He's got a good change. He's got a good slider. He's going to pitch well out of the bullpen. The stamina, go for 5 innings or so. He's an extreme fly ball pitcher. Is something to consider here too. Again, while the power has definitely increased in bronze over the last couple months, it is not a powerful. There's not a ton of it. There's really not a lot of power in this format right now, and so an extreme fly ball pitcher doesn't get hurt like he will in like a 1982 tournament or something like that. And so that's something to keep in mind. All time, he's 14th in earned run average, which is a little sad, but 4th in FIP all time. He's coming in 4th all time, but a 304 FIP this time, WHIP of 1058. Just a really awesome week for McKenzie. Let's look at guys. We'll talk briefly about guys who just missed the list. So we've got Scott Diamond at 16. We've got Brian Ricard at 17, who's ranking 11th all time. McKenzie at 19th all time. Who did we not see? We didn't see Steve Cook, did we? Steve Cook coming in at 21, ranking 23rd all time. We saw Chirinos, we saw Bird. I think we saw everybody else in the top 10 used. Cook used to be really good. Struggling now, it looks like. A little bit less useful than he used to be. I'm really curious about something, so let's go here. No, they don't have stats for it yet. Dang it. Let me go here. Let's go pitching stats. Split. Game type. Yeah, it won't let me split them as a starter versus as... Oh, here we go. Lineup as starter, as reliever substitution. Interesting. I'm curious if they will show me splits. I'm going to go onto the other account real quick. Because I know that splits, versus lefty and versus righty splits. That's not what I wanted to do. Do not show up. Let's check. Ooh, I got a win and a third, fourth place. Look at that. Backup team coming through. And a second place. Holy smokes. The defense teams. I haven't even... hey, go like put together some defense teams because I haven't really tried to put a team together and they're apparently getting stuff for me. Really curious about this. Let's go statistics, sortable stats. Oh, you know what? Lineup as starter, as reliever. It turns to 0. No, it doesn't. I might be able to get... Oh, it's going to be so much work. I'll think about it, guys. That's going to create extra twice the work for me. Really not. I'll think about it. I think I might be able to get pitching as a starter versus pitching as a reliever in there. It's going to be 2 extra downloads, it looks like. It's going to be 3 instead of 1. That's a lot of work. That is a lot of work. Steve Cook at number 21. So I think that's it. Willard Nixon in 22, Person at 23, Rasmussen in 24, and that's it. Relief pitchers. Let's go see. Guardado comes out at 15. He ranks 24th all time, which is a little surprising. Guardado, I've found, is a pretty consistent performer, and it's really weird to me because versus lefties, you'd think he would perform up in this tournament, right? Because there's so many right-handed pitching. People have got to be playing a lot of right-handed guys off of their bench, like serious lefty hitters off of their bench, I would imagine, is why Guardado is struggling. A 339 FIP, 303 earned run average over this period, 335 all-time, 327 all-time. So over 2,356 innings pitched. Again, even if I do that, it's going to... The openers are going to be... It's going to be all openers at the top of the list. Although these probably won't get enough innings to qualify. I'll think about it. I will consider it. Your Lance Painter has been struggling too. We'll see. Guardado with a little bit of a rough time go of it for right now. Mike McCormick at number 14, not even a guy on the list. 341 FIP with a 278 earned run average all time, or this week. Way out pitching his earned run average. Seriously good week for McCormick this week. McCormick has some home run issues there at the out of the bullpen. 0.81, that's 21st out of 23 qualifying relief pitchers. So expect some home runs. Not sure you want him to be your stopper. Also has a 43% start percentage, so keep that in mind when you're looking at the ERA. Expect it to be a little bit lower as a relief pitcher as well. So you can even see that's probably part of the reason his ERA is so inflated here, is because you're looking at 10% more of his starts have been as a starting pitcher all time than this week. So, you can probably expect decent performances out of Mike McCormick. Number 13 is a guy who used to be way high up on the top of the list, Neftali Feliz. He is not up there anymore right now. 28th all time. Number 2 in earned run average. Serious earned run average, though. 337 FIP. The home runs, the walks. I think people are avoiding the control, and his stuff's a little bit lower than some of these other relief pitchers, too. So, interesting to see. He's out pitching his FIP by a full run, but it's consistent. Must be pitching in front of some pretty awesome defenses. Extreme fly ball pitcher, so avoiding those home runs. Solid earned run average for him. What's up? I gave him some mealworms earlier, but he hasn't had crickets in a couple days, so Jay Watachik comes in at number 12. This was our guy. There are almost no relief pitchers played, all starting pitcher. Is this as much of a thing at the tourney level? No, not so much. It's a little bit of a thing, but not as much up there. And we can talk about... I don't see it as much, especially down here at bronze, because there aren't as many starting pitchers who are going to get a huge stuff bump from moving to the bullpen. There's a few, but there's not a lot. On the perfect team level, all those 100 rated starting pitchers are able to get that huge stuff bump and benefit from that stuff bump, where there's not nearly as much of that here at the bronze level. And there's not a ton of viable top level relief pitchers either, whereas down here there's a lot of relief pitchers that are completely viable for the format. So the relief pitchers, I think, are mostly relief pitchers. There's some starting pitchers that get used in relief. You're going to see one on the list is AJ Puck, who gets used, and we'll talk about him if he pops up, when he pops up. So Watachik ranks 32nd all time, but had a solid week this week with a 347 earned run average and a 333 FIP at number 12. Good home run suppression for him, high movement, good stuff for him. Sorry, my wife's feeding the thing, so if you guys can hear the bags crinkling in the background, I apologize. But we'll move up to number 11. It's all her fault. The most used relief pitcher of all time and currently is John Gellner. 335 FIP, he gets a start here and there, 344 FIP, 347, ranking 22nd all-time. I'm a little surprised to see him this low. As I said, he's another one of those guys that was at the top of my list, but for a little while as a consistent player, he doesn't quite have the top end of some of the really solid relief pitchers, though. And so he does have a little more stamina than some of them. So I think he gets used a lot as like a multiple innings, that 6th, 7th inning guy for some of the lower stamina pitchers. But I've had trouble. Not my kid. What? No, the lizard. Probably, yeah. Yeah, the special editions get really pumped up. Agreed. Moving on to the top 10, Adrian Morajan, the 7th most used relief pitcher all time. See, now you start seeing these relief pitchers who separate themselves with their stuff, right? So even at the perfect team level, you see a lot of pitchers with really good stuff and really good movement to avoid the home runs. Down here, that stuff is really important because it gets you those strikeouts. There's a lot of there's not a ton of avoid K strikeouts down here in the batters, and so the guys this is some serious stuff that you see out of Adrian Morajan, which gets him number 1 in strikeouts. He's got a 333 FIP, 343 earned run average, 326 FIP, 314 earned run average all time. So Morajan comes in at number 10. Does have a little bit of a home run issue from Morajan. Number 9 is Bruce Sutter. Stuff, movement, control guy. Solid across the board. 3 pretty good pitches. Sorry, it was a bad joke. Oh, I got you. No, you're good. I call my kids lots of names. I think all of them could be said on screen. I don't think I call them anything super mean. Good fastball splitter with a slider thrown in for Bruce Sutter. 81 contact, 83 or control, 83 control. Number 3 in walks. Decent home run suppression, middle of the pack. Let's up some, but not a ton. Not going to strike too many people out, but 323 FIP with a 319 earned run average. All time he ranks number 5. A little bit of a rough week. Looks like his earned run average bounced a little bit this week for Bruce Sutter. Alex Wood comes in at number 8, another high stuff guy. This one with good movement and pretty decent control along with it. We saw the Morajan, who's got the really low movement to go along with this stuff. Now we're looking at Wood, another live pitcher. He's got the high stuff against lefties, just kind of okay against righties. And so he's a guy who guys are hoping will pitch well and largely has. 331 FIP, 308 earned run average, 350, 327 all time, which is a little bit lower, ranks 23rd all time, but had a pretty solid week this week. One of the things to keep in mind with Wood is that he does get some starts, so 26% all time, 35% start percentage, so you can actually probably expect... No, I'm good, thank you. You can actually probably suspect slightly better than these numbers out of the bullpen than you would. That's interesting. That's Those are pretty good numbers as a start for a 35% start guy. And would probably, with the 70 stamina, probably hold the pace a little bit with those starters that have, the 3 good pitches. That circle change, I wish this was instead of a sinker, a fastball. I really think that the speed separation on these 3 pitches would be pretty useful, but where it's a sinker instead, I think that holds him back just a little bit. At number 7, Calvin Schiraldi from the 1986 Boston Red Sox. Really solid stuff versus right-handers. 78 stuff, 71 control versus lefties. Still a pretty good pitcher. 79 fastball, you can see now. You see that fastball with the curveball and the slider. 250 earned run average, 319 FIP. Third and fourth in those respectively. Number 1 in WHIP over the course of this week. Home runs, walks, kind of middle of the pack. Top third in strikeouts. Probably don't feed them. No, the kids know. I don't feed them mealworms and crickets, not unless they want them. They're teenagers. They get to choose what they eat at this point, within reason. 284 earned run average all time. He's 14th all time, which seems a little low to me based off of what I'm seeing this week. But it is a little bit of a small sample size. He's not even in the top 10. So Schiraldi at number 7. Number 6 is Jonathan Loziga. Really good stuff. Number 5 in strikeouts. Number 1 in earned run average this week. Just barely misses the top 10. You can see the 2 start percentage, 5 start percentage this week. So he gets one here and there. Maybe as an opener, hard to tell. 244 earned run average this week, outpitching his all-time earned run average by more than half a run. So Loziga, decent option. He's a guy that I like. He's one of those live cards. Lots of live cards over here. Number 5, top 5, AJ Puk. I don't have that information, AAP. I am not part of that team. They'll announce it soon, though. From what I hear, it's going to be announced soon. I can't give you more information than that because I am not privy to any of it. But right now 21 is available. But it'll be based off of my knowledge and my the fact that I've been playing for 15 years. I would guess late March would be my guess, perhaps early April. You should start seeing Road to the Show stuff soon, though, based off of the history of the game. I'm not actually employed by them, so I don't know any of the good information on that stuff. 4 pitches for Puk, 3 really good ones, really good stuff. 4th in earned run average, 6th and 5th this week. All time, he's 10th and 344, 26th. A little sad to see him pitch that poorly. 14% start percentage. So again, you can expect a little bit better. Yeah, it's usually about the 3rd week of March on a Friday, and the people who pre-order get a 3-day head start while everybody else comes in the Monday after is generally what happens. And so top 10 in all of these, 4th in strikeouts, 7th in home runs, 21st in walks. This is a little bit higher than I would have expected it to be based off of usage, but Puk is that seems really high. I'm curious. Let me make sure. 320. Yeah, there's definitely a -1 down there. So 344. There must be a lot of guys with small sample sizes that are just lower. I really think he's probably a little bit better than that. And again, the 14%. So probably about the numbers you'll expect to see out of your relief pitcher. Number 4 is Caleb Ferguson, another high stuff, low movement, high control guy. A little bit of a home run issue, and moderate control. A little bit of a home run issue, a little bit of a walk issue here, but strikes a ton of guys out. 5th this week in FIP, 6th in earned run average, 8th in earned run average, and sub 3 earned run average all time. 8th in FIP all time. Sorry, the walks definitely hurt him in this ranking. As do the home runs. Probably why we're seeing Puk a little bit low too. But Ferguson showing a little bit better than AJ Puk. Everybody's kind of clustered together. You got him with a 323 FIP at 8th, and then you've got just 0.2 FIP after that is 26th all time. So you can see they're kind of clustered. There's not a ton of separation here among relief pitchers. At number 3 is Bill Henry. With 468 innings pitched. That earned run average is terrifying. But this week, he put up a 308 FIP, which is right in line with that. A 311 earned run average. He's your long relief pitcher. You hate using Puk. I can see that over time it definitely looks like in small samples he's pretty good, but over time this is pretty concerning to me. That's pretty out there. The ERA plays well. The ERA looks good, but that FIP is pretty scary. You better have a good defense behind him, apparently. And for a guy who's a strikeout pitcher, for a guy who's a high stuff pitcher, oh, that wasn't Puck. Where'd he go? I lost him. There he is. For a guy who's a high stuff pitcher, that's a little bit concerning to me, for sure. Bill Henry at number 3 didn't even show up here. 200 just made the cutoff. 208 innings pitched, a 308 FIP, 311 earned run average, almost top 10 in strikeouts, middle of the pack in home runs. Doesn't ever walk anybody. 1.43 walks per 9 innings. He ranks 3rd all time, guys. 334 earned run average, 307 FIP. Something to keep in mind. Interesting. Left-handed pitcher, Bill Henry. Screwball. That's going to do it. I talked a little bit yesterday on my stream. I stream for my online league, and I talked a little bit last week about it too. I'm going to move this over to here because I call these weird. The knuckleball, the knuckle curve, and the screwball, I am convinced do an outsized number of difference on the way guys pitch. And so him having this screwball, I think, is setting him up a little bit on this FIP and this earned run average for you. So this is going to move into this column next week because while it is technically an off-speed pitch, I consider it a weird pitch. I'm going to label him. So you got your velocity, your changeups, your breaking pitches, and your weird pitches are what they're going to be labeled next week. So knuckleball lowers batting average ball in play. Don't think knuckle curve does. Screwball reverse splits 95% of the time. What's up, your kidneys? Good to see you, man. Thanks for dropping by. Does not roll limiting you to a 1-game license. Yeah, you can buy as many copies as you want. I have 2. Ferg out the window and got Henry. If you guys don't check out Your Kidneys streams on Monday nights, he also streams with DRC on Thursdays. But if you're into Perfect Team at all and you want some help with your lineup, send it to Your Kidneys. He does awesome stream on Monday that I'm going to have to send him a team for because, man, they are awful. Super Bronze is tonight. I'm excited too. And so I don't know if I'm going to have time to put a team together. I got to pick my kids up from school soon, and we have a concert tonight. So I'm hoping to have a good team put together for next week's Super Bronze. Bill Henry at number 3. Number 2 is Larry Sherry. Again, not on the list here. Larry Sherry is a guy, I'm surprised he's not getting used more. He is a righty. You do have this versus righty thing here. So I don't know what to think about Larry Sherry right now. Obviously, his all-time rank is pretty bad. I've always been a little surprised to not see him get used more. His rank this week, the strikeouts, he's 3rd. Home runs, he's 4th. He's got pretty good home run suppression. He just had a really awesome week this week. Whereas over 947 innings pitched all-time, doesn't look real great. He was a guy that for a little while looked really good and then just never performed on my team. Obviously isn't performing for most other teams. This is a pretty huge aberration and the biggest one we've seen so far. Number 2 this week. That's crazy. 304 FIP puts him 2nd this week, outpitching his FIP by half of a run, and it's all that home run suppression. He walks too many people. He isn't really elite at striking people out, even though he's got that stuff, and he's got the lefties are going to hit bombs off at him. He must have just had a really good setup. Whoever was pitching him this week must have a really good setup on how to use a guy like Sherry. Maybe get the right-handed, maybe get the, I don't know. Maybe as like an early inning open, maybe as an opener. That's probably the best use of Sherry would be as like an opener. He does have 34 stamina. I don't see this card getting a lot of use. Sherry's a fixture in Stenz's lineup. Interesting. I feel like he really, this is one of those cards that really has to be used the right way. in order to be effective. Because this and bronze is a little bit scary. This low versus lefties. Maybe as a late inning, maybe as a closer, once you get the lefties in there, I wonder, maybe as a closer after your early relief pitchers have come in and gotten all those lefties into the lineup, and then, or gotten all those right-handed hitters into the lineup against the lefty pitching, and then have Larry Sherry pitching as the closer is a way that he could be used. Interesting. That's really interesting. Maybe a guy who throws all lefty starters, with like an anti reverse meta team or something. Interesting. Those are serious good numbers this week for him. At number 1 is Dave LaRoche. Number 1 FIP this week. Top 10 in earned run average. Top 10 in everything over here. 7th in strikeouts. 3rd in home run suppression. 8th in walks per 9 innings. Only 228 innings pitched. Let's think about Dave LaRoche. All time, he's number 1 in a 533 inning sample size with a 251 earned run average and a 283 FIP. None of this makes sense to me. 0.3 home runs per 9 innings. So the home run suppression for him against lefties, well, yeah, with all these lefties, interesting. Dave LaRoche, this is an interesting. These stats are interesting to me. I don't know. It is a small sample size, but it's not super small. It's not like some of the 50 inning pitch guys we had last week. Good fastball, good slider, neutral pitcher, slower velocity, good hold runners, good versus lefties, and he's Drake's grandfather. I did not know that. You learn something every day. Too many better cards with good control. If only Manfred hadn't ruined specialists. I absolutely agree. Oof. I hate it. I hate the three batter rule. Sherry, Bailey? Are you saying that for LaRoche, or are you saying that for Sherry? Interesting. For Sherry, yeah, the Sherry's a little bit scary to me, especially versus lefties in this format. But I do think that if you can get him in there against a mostly righty lineup, then he has his use. This is pretty scary versus lefties, though. And I think I'm going to be honest, I think this amount of usage might be a relic because he's been on my list in the past. And I have a feeling this is a little bit of a relic from lists of mine in the past where maybe I didn't necessarily set you up right. If Stens likes him, and Stens knows what he's doing. So, interesting. LaRoche looks interesting to me against these lefty-heavy lineups. So those are the lists for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Which starting pitchers are ranked number 1 and number 2 all-time in FIP? Let's go find out. Pitching stats. FIP. Starting pitcher FIP rank. Sort. Oh, that's not going to work. Dang it. Let's see. Let's find number 1 going down here. The problem is I have a pivot table connected to a chart, and so the chart doesn't organize. Number 2 in FIP all time is Nelson Briles, who didn't quite qualify for the list this week. That's over a 609 innings for Briles. And number 1 is, who's this? Michael Wacha, over 400 innings. So we'll ignore Michael Wacha and go to number 3, which is George Stone at number 3, over what is that? 1,100 innings. Any Richard Blyer data? Let's see if we can find him. Blyer. I spelt that wrong. B-L-E-I. I don't know. I don't see him there. Let's see about here. Type in Richard instead. I'm not seeing Richard Blyer. Let me go see if we have him in the data sheet and see if I even have innings pitched from him. That's not how you spell his name. It looks like I have a couple appearances from him, but not enough to show up on any of the stuff over there. Thanks, Mattia. I appreciate it. And so I'm going to. So I don't have, sadly, a giveaway today. I got to get with my guys and find out and say, hey, how do I run it? I know how to run them on my stream now. I don't have a way to do it. They got to let me know on this stream how to do it. So I don't have a giveaway for you today. We'll do that next week, I hope. I'm going to get with Rich and find out. But I hope you enjoyed the stream. I hope you had fun. My Discord, oh, yeah. Let me put... so let's do this. So if you go to that site at the bottom, my Twitch page, my Discord will be over there. My username in Discord is Malivion, Malivion. However, I am on the Out of the Park page as Angered Unicorn, and if you scroll up a little bit on like the streams and videos site, you should see my stream from yesterday on there, and you can click me if you're trying to PM me through Discord. So thanks guys for hanging out. I hope you enjoy it. I do stream for my online league. I do a lot of top monthly players. Tomorrow we're doing monthly pitchers for 2023 May in my OHBL online league. Some of them are in there, so hi guys. And Thursday I do my smaller brand new online league. I'm probably not going to stream Friday this week, but hit me up tomorrow. Drop by tomorrow. I'll do probably do a 10,000 point giveaway tomorrow too. So I hope you guys enjoyed the stream. If you have feedback, shoot it to me over on Discord. Feel free. I love feedback because it's what makes me better. So that's the only way I can get better, is knowing that I'm doing something wrong. So I appreciate you guys coming in and hanging out with me, and I hope you guys have an outstanding. What is Limerick? What kind of a win streak is Limerick on, Matt? Now tomorrow will be it should be right around 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. I might push for a little bit early tomorrow. It might be 10:30 because I have a pretty long stream. 18 game winning streak. I hate Limerick. Helgeson is broken, Matt. Whip, if you're in here, you need to fix Mike Helgeson. Will this be the list? So the list I'm going to put up on my Discord, and if you PM me or go over to my Twitch page, you can find the link to my Discord and join us over there. We have some pretty good conversations. It's been quiet as 21 is wound down, but I suspect it'll pick back up once 22 starts. And the list will be over there on my Discord. So feel free. Helgeson is ridiculous. You missed the first half and would love to see the list. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it'll post on my Discord. And it'll disappear really quick on the Out of the Park. I don't have this stuff to make it stay there for a while. Holy smokes, this was a 3-hour stream. You guys got your packs today, huh? Whew. They're going to kill me. I might get fired for being too long. Guys, have a great, fantastic day. If you hang out with me tomorrow, cool. If you come by, drop by and hang out tomorrow. If you don't, if you're only interested in the Perfect Team tournament stuff, then I'll see you next Tuesday. Have a good one, guys.